right, it is 6:30. I'd like to call this meeting to order. To the April 12th Willits City Council meeting, and we're going to start with the pledge of the flag. Alexis, would you lead us in the pledge this evening? Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, Dolores, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong. Here. Rodriguez.
Present.
Stransky.
Yes.
Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mayor Connie.
Yes. We're going to start this evening with a moment of silence to honor the memory of former Willits Police Sergeant James Miller. If you would all join us in a moment, much appreciated. Thank you. All right, moving on to public communications. The City Council, and I just wanted to say we will be issuing a proclamation later this evening in honor of Sergeant Miller, so that is our only acknowledgement of him. The City Council welcomes participation in its meetings. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes per person so that everyone has an opportunity to address the Council. To expedite matters and avoid repetition, whenever any group of persons wishes to address the Council on the same subject matter, the Mayor may request the group appoint a spokesperson. This item is limited to matters under the jurisdiction of the Council, which are not on the posted agenda. Public criticism of the City Council, Commission, boards, and agencies will not be prohibited. The City Council can take no action on non-agendized items. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to speak to an item not on the agenda? Nope. Okay. All right, you will have an opportunity to speak at each of the agendized items, so we will have public comment after each of those, so rest assured you'll get your chance to speak. Public matters. Our first matter is the presentation of a proclamation honoring the memory of former Willits Police Sergeant James Miller, who served our community for almost 15 years. As Vice Mayor Gonzalez actually worked with the sergeant, we're going to have him read the proclamation tonight, and I believe his daughter is here to accept the proclamation.
Right, a proclamation of the Willits City Council honoring Sergeant James Joseph Miller. Whereas today, April 12, 2023, the City of Willits would like to honor James Joseph Miller, retired sergeant with the Willits Police Department, who passed away on April 1st, 2023. And whereas Jim came to the department in early 1984 on loan from the Ukiah Police Department, then joined our force on February 12, 1985, retiring March 28, 1999. And whereas Jim was involved in several special assignments in his tenure at the department, which included asset forfeiture liaison, equipment manager, reserve coordinator, sexual assault response team coordinator, sexual habitual offenders program coordinator, and vehicle program manager. Jim also received a community award in 1986 as Willits Police Officer of the Year. And whereas one of the many highlights of Jim's career was the night he delivered a baby in front of the old police department, then proudly made the trip to the hospital to sign the birth certificate, where to his surprise the parents had given their new baby boy Jim's middle name Joseph, and whereas he was also instrumental in creating the personal car plan where officers were allowed to take their patrol cars home. Guess you could say always on duty. To this very day, our officers continue to benefit from Jim's efforts, including his logo creation on our patrol vehicle that states "For the People." And whereas Jim was well respected by fellow law enforcement officers and those he worked with for his leadership, understanding of the law, and dependable. And in fact, some of his rookies have gone on to other departments to hold rewarding positions, which includes a lieutenant and a homicide detective. And whereas the city of Willits is honoring a man that has touched a lot of lives with his humor, quiet acts of kindness, generosity, and loyalty to his family, friends, and community. Now therefore, I, Gerardo Gonzalez, Mayor, Vice Mayor of the city of Willits, along with Mayor Greta Connie and council members Larry Stransky, Sabrina Rodriguez, and Matt Strong, do hereby recognize Sergeant James Joseph Miller's legacy of service in law enforcement in the city of Willits, expressing our deepest appreciation for his dedication and commitment to the citizens of Willits and extending our heartfelt sympathy to his family. May he rest forever in peace. In witness whereof I have hereunto set my hand and caused the seal of City of Willits to be affixed this 12th day of April 2023. Jim was one of my trainers when I first started at the police department, and later on I was promoted to sergeant, and Jim followed. Actually, can't remember whether Jim was promoted before me or I was promoting him, but we were pretty close in line there. And we worked together for several years, but I looked up to Jim, and he was one of those people that always knew to do the right thing because he followed the law. In many ways, it's kind of shaped my way of doing business. Along the way, in a small community, sometimes people want to push you to do things that are not with the law. And ultimately, it's the law that you have to follow, and Jim followed the law, and he was a good guy. And his daughter Wendy's here, and I met her the other day for the first time, and in fact, it was the day that Jim passed away. And I just want to say thank you to his family for sharing him with us, and to Jim up there, thank you for everything you've done to this community, for this community, and to help me, and to the police department, and to everybody you've touched. Wendy, I'd like to. Step over here, maybe yeah. So let me give you these first, and here's this, and so we'll work that way so that people in TV land could see us. And then Jack's gonna take a picture. And Wendy, would you like to say anything?
I thought about this day. I thought of, if I had to talk over this day. It's just no words. Thank you doesn't mean enough. From the friends and family, thank you. He always used to have to give his report on himself during evaluation time, and he always thought that everybody could do better, that everybody had room for improvement. And the last thing that I read was, if there was something to do, he was going to be in the middle of it, and that just stands true to everything he did. He loved Willits. Thank you.
Okay, our next item under public matters is the Frontier Days Board asking on the status of repairs to the damaged facilities at the rodeo grounds. Is there someone here from Frontier Days who would like to speak to address this? Yes, okay. There are a lot of people out in the hallway who haven't been able to make it in. Is there anyone in here who is here for an item other than this one right now? I'm kind of thinking maybe we can swap places so some of the folks out there who want to be here for this item can come in. Is that possible? Thank you, Andrew. Appreciate it. Anybody else? No? Everyone's here?
Can we maybe open those doors up too?
Yeah, and Dolores, is it possible for us to open the doors so people can have more access? Okay, do you want to stay? All right. There are a couple more seats in here if anybody would like to be here for the Frontier Days item. We do have a little more room.
Just gonna let me sit here while I do this. No. No, but you go ahead.
Thank you. All right. Everybody in who wants to squeeze in for this item? If you could come to the dais and introduce yourself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Tracy Legree. I am the secretary for Willits Frontier Days. This last December, a tree in the recreation grove fell onto the rodeo grounds leased by Willits Frontier Days, damaging 2 buildings, which if not repaired, will require cancellation of the rodeo this year. Frontier Days, pursuant to its lease, is required to repair damage to leased facilities and obtain a contractor to make the emergency repairs using its own funding. Our contractor applied for a building permit in early March. Our contractor was installing fencing to protect the construction site. City Willits staff issued a stop work order, which has not been removed. The building permits have been held up for a substantial amount of time. A meeting with the city staff on March 29th, Willits Frontier Days was told that the building permit would be issued on March 30th or April 1st. At the latest, the permits have still not been issued, threatening our ability to get the repairs completed in a time to avoid the cancellation of the rodeo. Willits Frontier Days has not filed a claim against City of Willits and notified city staff that it would be using Frontier Day funds for the emergency repair project. The city staff has said that Frontier Days to proceed with repairs using its own contractor and its own funds, that Frontier Days has to go through competitive bidding and has to go through the hoops of paying prevailing wages. Our research points to the fact that the city staff has not analyzed the situation correctly. Frontier Days has not asked the city to award the contract. Frontier Days itself will be awarding the contract, paying its licensed contractor with its own funds. The competing bidding law does apply to contracts to repair public buildings, but only when the city awards the contract. Frontier Days, as a private entity, is also not required to pay prevailing wages. Further, even if the city was awarded the contract, the emergency nature of the availability of exemptions should be self-evident. Frontier Days is the primary cultural identity of Willits, and it's the longest-running continuous rodeo in California. It has been producing funds to support and build Howard Hospital and other community projects throughout the city for 96 years. The city staff has identified non-existent barriers to our proceeding with these repairs, and its inability to approve building permits for an emergency repair project makes no sense. Willits Frontier Days is a major economic driver in this community. It brings in thousands of people to Willits each year, and those visitors spend money here. It seems silly for the city to jeopardize this important event over the claim that the city is the only one who can contract for the repairs, because we are using our own funds and contracting with the contractor ourselves. There is no need for us to comply with the requirement imposed by the city. The building permits should not be withheld for an emergency project because the city's view that it's restrained by legal requirements or for any other reason. This is not a project where the city is being asked to perform the work itself. Frontier Days is doing the work with nonprofit funds. If the city insurance carrier wants to contribute, that would be fine, but Willits Frontier Days never receives a cent from the city. Frontier Days wants to do the work with its own contractor. Apparently, the city wants to do the work itself using FEMA funds, but that would take years, and we do not have that amount of time. So it is not a practical solution, and the continuation of the Frontier Days should not be jeopardized by an impartial path. Although city staff has been supportive of Willits Frontier Days in many ways over the years, and even this year, you as council members should find out why the building permits are not being issued, and you should be careful of accepting answers from the city staff identifying an impossibility of issuing a building permit for emergency repairs. Irrespective of what the council is told by its staff, we invite council members to tour our damage. understand why the repairs of the damage is essential, and to talk to the Frontier Days with the hope that the members of the City Council will press its staff to find a way to allow these repairs to be made.
Thank you very much. So typically, during public communications, council does not respond. However, in this circumstance, since it is an agendized item, are we, Brian, I'm looking at you, are we open to a discussion at this point? Have you comments that you would like to make in response to the Frontier Days?
Yes.
Okay.
Basically, the council can, obviously, we have a room full of individuals who may be interested in this.
Okay.
I think you can also throw it open to the floor and ask for additional comments.
Okay.
Staff is here, who has been involved with the project to date. You can ask for clarification from them as well. So however you want to do, if you want to receive more comments, or do you want the staff's perspective of how we're proceeding?
Okay. I think that we have all of the individual council members have been in active discussions with staff regarding the situation. We have been regularly updated since the trees fell back in the fall. I think it would be important at this point, since we've heard the Frontier Days side, to hear also staff side, so that we can get a full understanding of what has been happening and what the discussions have been so far. So Brian, if you could introduce where staff is at this point and what suggestions staff has made in order to make sure that the Frontier Days events can happen this year, as
Yes.
that is the goal of the city as well as the Frontier Days organization.
So yes, I basically, and I have staff members here who can jump in, as well as Jim Lance, the city attorney, on some of the provisions. And I'm just gonna get to the point where we are now. I don't want to revisit the history or the events that led to this point. The city is prepared to jump in and oversee the placement of a temporary roof on the shed, building, booth, affectionately known as the Margarita Shed. We were trying to get a contractor lined up for that work. That fell through. We have the crew ready to be mobilized and get on that project. We have a plan set in place. We're going to have an engineer, a civil engineer look at, or a structural engineer look at it to make sure that the structural calculations are correct and can support it. In this fashion, this gives the Frontier Days organization sufficient time to occupy that building under the issuance of a temporary occupancy permit. It also allows the city to pursue with the correct bidding process to put the bigger project, basically the replacement of the complete restroom facility and the Margarita Shed, after all the events take place later this year. And in that light, we can have confidence that we're going to get reasonable and qualified bids, and that the council can have reassurance that the bidding process has produced correct results, that we have confidence that public funds are being used wisely.
And can you explain to the public why the project would need to go to bid when Frontier Days believes that it does not need to go to bid? What is the distinction between public property and private property?
Once again, it is ultimately city property, and being city property is subject to procurement provisions of state law as well as the city ordinance that, and I don't want to go into too far details, but basically we have administrative cap that we can approve projects and allocations to $60,000. Then we could do an informal bidding process up to $200,000, and then there's a more formalized bidding process. The state statutes basically allows or defines this bidding process to select contractors that would do the work in a reasonable fashion and have the confidence that public funds are being allocated correctly and not misused.
Do any council members have questions? Yes.
I have two questions. Who will be paying either in the short run or the long run for any repairs? And could you spell out, like, if there are different stages or different parts of the project, what the plan is?
So, and there's one element there I did not discuss, is that we're also looking to compensate for the loss of the restrooms, or the restrooms being out of commission, is that the city is looking to essentially place 30 temporary porta potties wash stations and ADA compliant units at that facility to compensate for the loss of the restrooms. So at this stage right now, we have a more elaborate plan set to do more work at the Margarita shed. When we're putting them aside, we took a component of that plan set and just fixated on the roof. And that's what we have determined that we can structurally make it sound.
The roof of the shed.
The shed. The restrooms are just not going to be able to be repaired in time. Not only just getting a contractor in place, but the possibility of finding the items secure. I mean, a lot of those fixtures have lead-in time that it's not going to happen.
So just so that I'm clear, the cost of the porta potties, will that cost be incurred by?
The city right now
The city?
has not reached out to any other organization. We would endure that cost.
Okay, so that.
And the maintenance of it, as well as the maintenance, or excuse me, the materials for the roof repair.
The temporary.
Yes.
And then the temporary
Yes.
roof as well.
And as noted, as we move forward, we get through the series of events that was on the horizon, we have city insurance that we're submitting a claim. We're also working with FEMA. And those are two different timetables. We're not relying on them to make the facility whole at this time. It's just not going to be reasonable. But we're looking at those remedies to put more permanent facilities in there in time for next year's event.
Okay, so if I was a member of the Frontier Board, and I was doing my budgeting, and I know that we've got this situation, what would you be expecting that you're going to have to put out to pay for any of the renovations that are going to take place, just to get us back to where we were before?
At this time, we have not made any proposals to the Frontier Days Board. We are looking at carrying those costs internally
Okay.
to general fund activity.
And then last question was really trying to understand, because I've received letters from the Frontier Days. I've received a couple of letters as well as a phone call. And then I've seen several revisions from yourself and city staff in different proposals and trying to work together. And I'm just wondering, because some of the questions that were asked by some of the members of Frontier Days, things have evolved and changed over the last few weeks or month. And I'm just wondering, with this last proposal that the city staff had for Frontier Days, what were the objections? Because it seemed to me as a council person that most of the issues had been addressed in a way that allowed for the festivities to happen this year. Certainly not a permanent facility, but it seemed like there was a fair compromise. And I'm just trying to understand what your objections are. Not in the beginning, because I heard a little bit of the history, but like where we're at today in terms of discussing it. What are the objections still? I don't know if you can summarize, or you...
I think Mr. Bowles, Davey, can you, because you
I'm trying to understand where the issue still is.
Jump up here so everyone can hear me.
Yeah.
Davey Bolts, I'm the building official. So right now our plan is, and I know there's a lot of concerns, and everyone here I think loves the rodeo, and we're for the rodeo. I go every year. So right now the plan is, early in the conversations, the bathrooms, when we had letters back and forth with rodeo, the bathrooms were kind of conceded as yes, we can manage with porta potties. And so the real issue was the margarita hut. And so, there's some power issues that go through there. That's the main power for a lot of the beer barn and the other booths. And so luckily, the power is actually on right there. So there's no issue with the power being turned off or during construction, because we're not going to anticipate interfering with that at all. So your power issue will be the same as it was last year. So however you need to configure all the booths to get power in the same manner as last year will continue. So what we're proposing is, because we cannot make a full repair because of the timelines for bidding, giving the time and contract and having the contractor get insurance and all that stuff, it takes time. and then we have to give them time to fix it. That will be, we're getting right up to the time of the event. And so basically, we're planning on doing a temporary roof, so it's a very simple plan, but it'll be secure, because we have, the alcohol and all the other items in there that we can't just put a canopy over that. So it'll be a temporary roof, 2x6 structure, plywood, secure, and I think that will allow you to serve margaritas out of it. So I think that is gonna, it's not the best solution, but it's the best for the time. So, does that answer the question? So we'll have the margarita hut accessible. We'll have the bathrooms there as former porta potties, and the power situation is, really not. I know it's a concern, but it really shouldn't be a concern because it'll be operational.
So I think Sabrina's question was, what is the resistance on the part of the Frontier Days to that volunteered solution from the city? Is there something in that plan that isn't sufficient? So I don't think you can answer that, but maybe someone from Frontier Days can address that.
We can just do it in the same amount of time. We can have it done. You wouldn't have to go back and do it over again. If you just let us do it.
The problem is that it's publicly owned property, and publicly owned property is under these rules from the state.
It has been for 100 years, and we've been doing it, and all this time we come out and do it, and that's what's really great about it, and we can handle it. We have before. Nobody ever said anything. Just let us do it. It'll be in code. It'll be all just right, and we'll pay for it. Margarita booth, the bathrooms and everything later, but it just seems like an unnecessary hoops to jump through when we can just do it. We're that kind of organization.
Right.
We can do that. So it's just, that's the frustration for us,
And
to have to do that.
I totally understand your frustration, and I hear that that is how Frontier Days has done things, in perpetuity. We're in the position where we are looking at the city's liability, and we're getting counsel from the city's attorney and from city management who's saying this is not a good position to put the city in. And so we're looking at the best interest of the entire community and to make sure that the facility is oops, someone hit our lights, going forward. And so that next year the bathrooms are complete and better than ever, and that all the ladies won't be waiting in line for a million years and missing the best events because we're in line for the bathroom that, didn't have enough space for everyone. And so I absolutely, I think we all understand the frustration, and we're alarmed by the possibility of Frontier Days canceling the events, because from this end, it looks like there's no reason to cancel. The arena is in great shape, the grandstands are fine, there's a workaround for the Margarita Shack, there's a workaround for the restrooms temporarily, and the next year, back and better than ever. So we're just kind of confused as to why we can't break through here. Yes, sir. Could you identify yourself, please, just so we have a record?
I'm Brian Kunka. I have a bachelor's in project management, and I've completed the certification EMP professional. I also have an MBA, retired first sergeant, Army, combat medic. I just understand, and I understand you guys have decorum and rules of order that you go through. Why don't you just make a proposal to turn it over to Willits Frontier Days? I understand it's public land, and the attorney has to get involved in all this. But there can be ways to mitigate and alleviate the liability that comes on the city, because it's public land, but it's the city's land. So you, as a controlling entity, can make decisions upon yourself to let Willits Frontier Days do that. Provide your expert, your engineer, to come and supervise the work that we do at the Frontier Days. Why is that not possible? That way you're not using taxpayers' money unnecessarily when the Frontier Days can fund the projects itself.
Jim, would you like to?
Sure. I think the city recognizes that there has been a long history of Willits Frontier Days doing repairs on their own. And without the city jumping in and saying, wait, stop, this is a public project, and it needs to be a publicly bid situation. But that's really not the way it should be done. There's a Public Contracts Code section 22,002 C1 says a public project includes the construction, reconstruction, erection, alteration, renovation, improvement, demolition, and repair work involving any publicly owned, leased, or operated facility. And so what we're talking about is the repair and the renovation of a publicly owned piece of property that the city, as the public entity, is obligated to make sure that the repairs follow the public contracting code. So we should not, even though perhaps we have in the past, we should not be saying, here, tenant, you take this on, indemnify us for any problems that might arise, and just do a good job and keep us safe and make sure you have insurance. We're not supposed to do that because the whole reason for public contracting laws is to invite competition and to discourage.
I'm familiar with the process.
Okay, well, maybe not everybody is, but the whole reason you have public contracting laws is so that you put jobs out to the public contracting community to bid on them. And so that there's not favoritism and there's competition, and that way the city gets the best job for the lowest bid. And that's the law that we...
Sometimes that's not the best idea.
Well, but that's the law that you have to follow. There are a few exceptions, but that's the basic law that we have to follow.
I understand, and the exception would be, you're the one that's wanting to do the project prospectively, so you're in charge of the whole thing. By law, you can make an exception as a governing entity to already say, look, we don't want to do the bidding process, we're going to let Frontier Days do it. Then you provide, whoever you want to send over there, they inspect, they supervise, and it's up to code. That removes you of any liability.
I don't agree with that.
Well, you're a lawyer.
Well, yeah, I am. I am, and I think that the city has its obligation to comply with the law,
It does.
and cannot simply turn the project over to whoever it wants.
But you can make an exception in any rule.
Jerry has a question for you, Jim.
So Jim, you are the lawyer. What happens if we just do like this man says, and who could challenge us,
Okay.
and what could happen? I'm
So-
just curious. If we went his way, you're not a lawyer, and lawyer, tell me what could happen to us now that,
Right.
because the press is here, and now that we're discussing this,
Other contractors.
Hold
Sir,
on,
sir,
hold on, you don't
sir.
have the floor.
I'm talking.
Understand.
So what could happen?
So if the city simply said, look, tenant, you take care of this, just indemnify us, you select your contractor, and the tenant just selects one of its members or its group of volunteers and does the work themselves. And if the amount of the repairs is an amount that triggers public contracting laws, and then we don't comply with those, then contractors A, B, and C in the county say, hey, wait a minute, that was a job I could have done with my crews. I didn't have an opportunity to bid on this job, and that's not fair. That's favoritism. You're allowing this tenant to pick and choose who's going to do the work, and that's a violation of the law.
I knew that answer myself.
What could happen? Well, I guess my question, what could happen to the city who owns the property? Not the renter, not the leasing, not the volunteer organization. Who would be in trouble? Or who could get in trouble, and what were the
Well,
ramifications?
if that was to be challenged, at the very least, and if that disgruntled contractor who didn't get the job convinced a court that the public laws weren't followed, at the very least, they could recover their attorney fees and costs by going after the city for that. And perhaps the court could, and it depends on what stage the courts got involved, if they could stop the project. I would think that someone challenging that would challenge it right away and not at the conclusion of the work, but that disgruntled contractor could contend that they lost out on an opportunity and that the city should be liable at least to recover their costs.
And the courts can also restrict the city's ability to proceed with future projects, securing contractors and vendors, because they recognize that we circumvented from legal proceedings.
Can you also address the fact that initially all of these projects were suggested as one thing, and you've already split them in order to avoid the requirement for the public bidding process, at least for the Margarita Shack, which will be considerably less than the trigger point for it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so by breaking them down, and once again, it's going back to that timeline scenario that I was describing earlier, we recognize that the restroom is no way, no how that it would have been a miracle to get a contractor lined up, get the plan set completed, and the materials on the site and have it ready and ready to go. Recognizing that, and we didn't want to rush that because that's an important aspect or component of that property, and it needs to be done correctly. And that's why we separated and took that out from the immediate situation. We're focusing on, we think we have the restroom facilities addressed by the porta potties and the wash stations put on. We think we have that box checked. So now we're looking at the margarita shed. And internally, we looked at bringing in sheds, small temporary structures, mobile food trucks or vendors, anything to get over this initial period that we're facing. And ultimately, and I'm pointing to Davey here, he came up with a solution of temporary structure, a temporary roof component on that existing structure. It meets intent. It may not be perfect, but from my understanding, the walls are structurally sound and can be used. We just need to cover it and secure it with a proper roof.
Sabrina.
I just wanted to revisit the question that I had, which what were the objections? And I just want to say that Frontier Days does an amazing job. There's lots of volunteers. Truly appreciate everything you do. I can just imagine the planning that goes into it, the hard work, the love, the passion. It's more than just a task that you're performing. And I just wanted to say that I appreciate that. But I think from what I've heard, that the challenge seems to be about how the task gets done, whether it's Frontier Days or us, or whether the city does it. And it feels like we've come up with a compromise on this, just maybe, it feels, anyway, I'm being honest, a little bit about control. Like we used to do it this way, and then our need to do it this way. And as a council member, I'm pulled between the two, but I have to remember that my responsibility is to the taxpayer as well. And we have to balance the risk that the taxpayers pay with the need of meeting the community. And it appears to me that a compromise has been made in the short run that allows for the festivities to take place while there's a long-term plan. So I'm still grappling with what the issue really is, other than this is how we used to do it. And I have a hard time saying, okay, let's abandon the wisdom of our attorney here and take any risk on for the taxpayers when the need is actually being met, even if it's not the way we want the need to be met. The need is being met. So I'm struggling with that. And I'll turn it back over to the mayor. Thank you.
Yes. Yes, please.
Good evening, I'm Jeffrey Cook. I've been a board member for 22 years at Frontier Days. Proud member of the community, and Willits is a very, very special place, and there's a reason for that. If you look around small communities like this all over the nation, they don't have a brand new rural hospital. We do. There's a reason for that. And we have a brand new fire department down there. It's beautiful. There's a reason for that. And Willits Frontier Days, from way back, has been the people would get out there and started we have such pride in our community because we did something. You have pride not because I'm handsome, but because we did something, right? And so the thing is, you have to do something, and there has to be an attitude of doing that, where so many times, and we've seen it in this community, what a great visionary Gordon Logan was. I remember staying with him. How about the ball fields? We'll just talk like that. We'll just talk like that. And it was great, and it happened. It was wonderful, and to see how everything else happened. But then, unfortunately, Ross, an attorney, when we started working with him, no, you can't do that. No, you can't do that. You have to go through this. We want to know how we can do it, now how we can't do it. And you guys are actually coming on with some very nice proposals here. I'm glad to see that you're doing that. But, we need to have that visionary look in what we do, and that's the pride of this community. And people recognize it. I had a fellow, I start the parade every year. Last year I handed out 2,500 flags. I'm very proud of that. And I was doing the show at the barbecue, the Rhodiola, please come. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, a fellow from out of town many years back, he says, boy, this is sure nice. He says, I'm from San Mateo. He goes, and I've been all over the country. He goes, you don't see this anywhere. He goes, this is very unique, this community. He goes, people, they all like each other and hugging each other. It's all nice, and it's so comfortable. And that gentleman has been sending me $300 a year to buy flags, because he says, look at you guys, what you do. And we are very, very special like that. And so I think it's important that we try to have that vision of going for it and give us our civic pride, because look what we've done, and we can do so much more. I just want to spur you in to have a good, positive attitude and try your best and do it. I know that you're limited, but, think about that, please. So we appreciate your help, and thanks for listening.
Thank you, Jeff. Did I see another hand? Yes, would you like to come up?
I'm Tammy Carlson. I'm a volunteer. And about the porta potties and the wash stations.
She needs to come up to the speaker so that...
The
Am I
dais,
not
please.
loud enough?
No,
It's
that's
for
for
the
the
TV.
for the TV folks, so they can hear.
Oh.
That actually doesn't amplify your voice, but it allows when
It
they...
allows him to
Oh,
film,
sorry.
so this can be on.
About the porta potties and the wash stations, well, we have electricity, so we can see what, that area. And then also, how often will those porta potties be maintained during that time, and the wash stations and such? Is it going to be daily? Is it going to be once a week? Just something to consider, right?
Daily.
And then lighting. So that's just my concern.
So I think, Davey, you addressed the power issue, so they should be able to rig lighting, is that correct?
No, we don't have lighting. We don't have lighting. We don't have extra lighting, and we're not sure where to put these porta potties. So that's our issue. That's
that
where
been-
we're...
And just identify yourself, please, for the record.
My name's Karen Kavanaugh, and we have a logistic issue with porta potty placement and lighting, and that they are convenient for elderly people to get to. And fencing to go around the building that you're saying the bathroom's not able to be shored up. I've heard that the women's side wasn't even damaged. So we were hoping it could be shored up, and the back half of the men's side could be, there's like one stall supposedly that's not able to be used. So if we're gonna be able to put a temporary roof on the margarita booth, why can't we do that with the bathrooms and use the bathrooms that are there? Because I'm guessing that these porta potties are gonna cost around $15,000. That's the other cost. And we weren't told about any wash stations to go with those in our letter.
So I believe wash stations are on...
So yes, and I may be wrong in the exact breakdown, but I think it's 23 porta potties, 3 ADA configured units, and then 3 or 4 wash stations. And the plan is to have them serviced on a daily basis.
And the city will incur that cost.
At this time, that's what
Do
the
you have
plan
an
is.
estimate of what the cost
I think all in between 12 and 15,000.
And our other concern is, while they'll be serviced daily, we supplied our bathrooms very well, where we, as volunteers during the events, didn't have time to go and resupply those bathrooms. We very rarely had to touch those bathrooms during our events. So these porta potties, because I've heard that there's going to be 3 or 4 put in front of the old bathrooms, those are going to fill up fast. And there's no way for a truck to get in there during our events to clean those bathrooms and empty them during our events. And I've been told, I'm not sure if it's true or not, that you were assuming to put the porta potties over by our dance stage area, the old tennis courts, to put the majority of them over there during our rodeo, because we have vendors down our paved driveway, and there's vendors that will be in the way of the walkway. So we're not sure about lighting issues over there. There's no lights over there. We would have to have a big light structure rented as well. And having people walk over there is a long ways. Yes.
Sabrina?
I was just curious, because I thought that I recalled going to the rodeo and the
Yes.
dance in the evening, and there was a
We had
long
rows, 10, exactly.
of porta potties, and I don't remember them being in full use most time. Like, I had no issue getting to a porta potty. It's not really, in the grand scheme of things, that far to walk. So is your concern that there would be an additional porta potties, or I'm still trying to understand?
No, well,
Aside from taking a few extra
no, I agree
steps.
with you. Well, during our events, we have the bathrooms. Those porta potties were only used during the dance. So half the crowd, they don't stay. You know, we have the people that want to stay and dance and have a good time. And so those porta potties are not used by 2,000 people during the events. They're used during the dance, which is used by maybe 200 people or less, I'm assuming. So, yeah, I mean, sometimes there's a waiting line, and there's 10 of them there, and we pay $5,000 for those porta potties. So I'm just concerned on where the placent's going to be during the rodeo, during the truck pulls. We could probably put them on the pavement, and as long as somebody can move them to another location during a rodeo, that's fine. But that's our issue with the porta potties. It's not a clear cut, great, we're happy to move on and get a roof on the margarita booth. We have other ice machines have to run a month before the events. We don't know when this roof is going to get put on. So, yeah, that's our issues.
Okay, so could somebody from Frontier Days work with the city to put together a logistic plan that both can live with in terms of porta potty placement and the provider being able to service them and not interrupt the facilities? Is that doable?
We have talked internally about opening up, access to the fence between Rec Grove and the rodeo grounds and place some units there just to spread them out to have that space.
So going forward after
There's options
We would
out
have
there.
work
Yeah,
on this
there's options available.
We would have a security issue with that? Would you be hiring extra security
We could
for
put
that?
temporary fencing in.
So I think, in interest of the fact that we have a very full agenda, and this is going to be a long night, we're going to have to wrap this topic up. We can't get in the weeds of the details of exactly where the porta potties are going to be. But what would be really nice tonight would be to come to some kind of agreement to recognize that the city is trying its best to work with Frontier Days to make sure that the events can happen this year. They're not going to be your dream. It's not going to happen that the bathrooms and the Margarita Shack and the office are going to be rebuilt exactly as they were before the darn tree fell, and they're not going to be ready by July. That's just the truth of it. Our hands are literally tied on this one. We can't just say, go ahead, do the work. We can't do it. It's public property, and we are bound by the laws. That's the unfortunate situation. But what would be really nice to make everyone feel like we're getting something working that can happen for this year's Frontier Days events is if we could get an agreement that you will work with city staff and accept all the branches that are being put out to come up with a compromise to make sure that you have at least facilities that will work in the interim until everything is constructed and back and better than ever next year.
Let's do that.
Does that sound good to you, Jeff?
That's what we've been trying the whole time.
Okay.
We're just
So-
concerned with ADA purposes,
And
that's all. We just don't want any of us to get sued, mostly.
Exactly.
That's a tripping hazard out there.
So just to be clear, everyone on this council and everyone at staff wants the rodeo to happen this year, wants all of the Frontier Days festivities to happen this year. You guys put on the heart of our community every year. It's the truth, and there is no obstruction on this end. We are working our tails off. Staff has put in so many hours on this. I can tell you I have received a call about this almost every single day from staff pulling at their hair, trying to figure out what will work. So this is definitely a priority. It feels like it's not fast enough for you. I get that. Government is frustratingly slow. That's why I own a private business and I don't work for government except for in my volunteer capacity here. And so I just want to reassure you that all efforts are being made to get what you want. It's just not going to be perfect this year, and we're asking you to work with us, and next year will be much better.
Thank you
Okay?
for your consideration. I have one more question. I'm getting ready to leave.
Okay?
It's been around for 96 years, apparently. Why is now the first time? I'm sure Frontier Days have had other disasters and things happen, and they prepared things and done the things themselves. why now all of a sudden is a city concern?
Well, Jerry, would you like to say something?
Out of all this time, we've
You know
done
what?
things for ourselves.
Early on, I had a call from Marcy, and I told Marcy, you know what? I feel the same way, you know, working for government over the years, and I probably was just as guilty. I've been around since when Gordon Logan was around, and I remember Gordon sitting there with Ross going, Ross, tell me how I'm going to get around these rules, and that was then. And I told Marcy that in the old days you could do a lot of things because people weren't watching, and the reality is everybody's watching. I took a temporary job like 2 years ago over there in Lakeport, and I went to go build a fence, and I have to be honest with you, first thing I met with their city attorney, and I kind of got the same thing. We're going to build a fence, we have to put it out to bid and do all this other stuff, and it's just the way things are. I was talking with somebody, because after all this, I was kind of reaching at straws. What could we do, et cetera. I talked with some people at the county, and John, I could probably pick your brain about some projects out there, but they told me the same thing. There's some things that they have going that all of a sudden they figured out ways to do it, but they still had to comply with the law in the end. And that's it. That's why I kind of prefaced today when I was talking about my friend Jim, that we always followed the law. And you may not have known what the law, you know, you may have been ignorant at one point, and once you know, you have to follow it. And we're not ignorant anymore, sorry folks. And we got the press and everybody watching, and it's just the way things are. And I just want to conclude with, I do appreciate everything you do. Over the years, I got to tell you, I've literally worked a shift, come back after working all night to go direct traffic and do stuff, and then attend events on my own, and whatever I've done to volunteer with these things, whether it's working at the barbecue or doing whatever, and I recognize all the work that you guys do. I truly do. And up here, what you have to understand is everybody up here has gotten calls. We've been talking to these folks here and saying, what can we do to help Frontier Days, and please work with them. And we've all been there, and we, again, as the mayor said, we're not trying to obstruct your event. We're trying to do what we can do, and we're willing to work with you. I got to tell you, no other group is probably going to get this level of attention from us, because we recognize what Frontier Days does in the community. And that's why I'll be honest with you, you're getting the Cadillac, you're getting the Cadillac treatment. And if I have to say, without getting we're probably kissing some hiney here that probably wouldn't kiss otherwise, because I'll tell you what, we recognize the work you all do, and we see you as the value you bring to the community. And that's why we're doing that. And we've been on staff, and staff has been, we've been saying, come up with solutions. We've been trying to say, work out of the box, but in the end, guess what? People are watching, and we got to follow the law, and that's what it is. The law is the law.
And I have to tell you that I was 23 when I learned that my parents didn't really like the rodeo. I dragged them every year as a kid to go to the rodeo. So just know that we want this to happen. We want the city to work with you, and our hope is that you will accept that, and next year will be much better. So thank you all for showing up tonight. Thank you for the letters. Thank you for the calls. We're going to get this done.
Thank you for your
Okay.
consideration.
All right. Thank you, everyone. All right. Thank you. We'll take a minute for the room to clear out here. No, it's fine.
They're kissing your hiney, Lee. What's up with that? I'm not sure you want that close.
All right, next wave. Oh, I'm sorry. That's okay. Okay, the next one. Okay, so great. Thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, we've got a long night here. Okay.
Nice talking to you. Hi there, how are you?
Do you remember
Yes.
which one I am?
Kinda.
The youngest one. I had to put, I can make one last.
All right, if everybody could take a seat, we can continue here. Next item on our agenda is enactment of ordinances. We have none this evening, so we'll move on to the consent calendar. The City Council considers matters listed under the consent calendar as routine. We will take action with a single motion and roll call vote. Any council member may request the removal of an item from the consent calendar for separate discussion and subsequent action. Tonight, the only item is City Council minutes from March 22nd. Any comments from the council?
I so move. I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Anybody from the public like to make a comment on the minutes from March 22nd? Nope. Okay, Dolores, may we have a roll call, please?
Strong.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Stransky.
Yes.
Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mayor Carnegie.
Yes. What if I said no?
It wouldn't make any difference.
That's my life. All right, monthly activity reports, new business licenses for March of 2023 are included in the packet. They do not require action by the council, but are of public interest. Encourage you to look at that and see all the exciting new business activity in our community. We will now recess as the Willits City Council and convene as the Willits Successor Agency. The Willits City Council meets concurrently as the Willits Planning Commission and City of Willits Successor Agency. Under this, we will be looking at a conditional use permit request submitted by Wayne, is it Rogina? Is that the pronunciation?
I believe it is, that's
Okay. To place an 1,800 square foot single-family dwelling on a vacant lot in the R3 zoning district. The R3 district requires the granting of a conditional use permit to accommodate the placement of a new single-family dwelling. The subject project is south of the intersection between Coast and Mill, and I believe our city planner is, yes, Taylor will be here presenting tonight.
Thank you. Good evening, council members, honorable mayor, everyone in attendance tonight. My name is Taylor Terry. I'm the city planner, and we are going to be discussing proposed use permit U2201 for the Rodeo residents. I made a couple of changes to the PowerPoint. I hope they got into your agenda packets. If not, I apologize.
Probably not.
Probably not. They're minor changes, so bear with me. The presentation is behind you. The project parcel, should I continue?
Yes, please.
The project parcel, surrounding parcels, and the applicant/owner, Wayne, has somewhat of an extensive history with the city, dating back to 2016 with the application of a minor land division. So I'm going to start with the background to kind of provide some insight into this application. The minor subdivision was applied for in 2016 and was approved in 2018. The new parcel descriptions were recorded, and both of the new parcels created carried the zoning designation of R3, multiple residence designation. 8 months later, the city approved amendments to the zoning code, effectively removing single-family residence as a principally permitted use and requiring a use permit to establish a single-family residence in an R3 zone. The intent of this change was to reserve the limited number of R3 zone parcels in the city, to reserve them for multiple residence use. Now enter year 2022, when Wayne Regina came in for his use permit application to construct a single-family residence on the property, which is zoned R3. Wayne came in originally with a site plan where the residence was located in the middle of the parcel, but upon comparing the intent of the zoning designation, the intent of the ordinance, he was willing to move the residence over to the northern portion of the parcel to allow for potential development of future multifamily use. Around the time that Wayne came in for this permit, we also started working on the land use element update. We hired consultants to help us. Destiny's been pioneering that project. And upon doing some research and the preliminary exercises that go into this land use element update, which is quite comprehensive and has not been updated since 1992, we have found that there are some land use incompatibilities between parcel zoning designations and the existing developments on site. They're not always matching up in some places. I'm sure we've seen in cases around San Francisco Ave, for instance, where it's zoned commercial and there's existing residences, things like that. Doesn't quite match up. So as part of this land use element update, I'm doing my best to summarize this, although Dusty is like I said, the pioneer. We can suspect that parcels around town will be rezoned to match the existing land uses to become more compatible. And one of the parcel that may be affected by this would be Wayne's parcel. And it is a possibility, I'll add, that this parcel might become R2, which would principally permit single-family residences by right. So we are not exactly sure what the final land use element will entail. It's set to be complete September. But it is worth mentioning because this parcel that we're going to be discussing tonight may very well be affected. Dusty, did you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so, Taylor. You summarized that very well. I mean, essentially, what we're attempting to articulate here is that Wayne got a little bit of a raw deal in the fact that you had that intention to put that single-family home on that lot, and that was part of the purpose of the subdivision there. You know, there's this game we play with the state called, you know, it comes out of the housing element, and we have to come up with a regional housing needs allocation. And that's really what led to the recommendation, the housing element, which we followed through with the zoning code revision that Taylor referenced, to really reserve the R3 zoning for multifamily housing. If we hadn't made that move, you know, then we end up playing this game where now we have to go look throughout the city and find other lands to force multifamily zoning on, potentially against property owners' will. So that's really what led to the need to change up the zoning rules and disallow single-family homes without benefit of a use permit in the R3 district. And therefore, Wayne, you're in front of us here tonight. You know, what staff attempted to do was make something work. That's what you're going to see presented to you tonight. What we're presenting to you is something that meets the intent of the zoning district. Hopefully lets Wayne move forward with what his intentions were. And again, as Taylor referenced, through this land use element update, we're looking at a comprehensive review of the existing zoning code for the city. And part of that, like what example would be, we have an entire single-family residential neighborhood that's zoned C1. So we're probably going to be looking at that and likely coming with a recommendation to rezone it to R1 to recognize the fact that it's actually a single-family residence. Similar things are going on in this area of town where Wayne's property is, where we have a bunch of R3 zone property that's already built out with single-family homes. So that might be another example where we cleaned up the zoning. So, thank you.
Well, thank you. That was a wonderful summary, better than I could do. Moving forward, now that we've provided a little bit of background into this unusual application, we're going to orient ourselves on the map. So this location, or this parcel, is located off of Coast Street on a private drive, approximately 300 feet east of its intersection with Highway 20 and Coast Street. It is a little bit over a half an acre parcel. It's grassy, it's vacant, predominantly flat. And on all four sides of the parcel, on all four abutting parcels, it all exists single-family residences. The parcel on the north, I believe, is 703 Coast Street. The parcel on the south abutting is 701 Coast Street, if I'm not mistaken. The city has a utility easement along the private drive to service facilities and utilities, but the private drive itself is maintained through a private maintenance agreement where all three of the parcels equally split the responsibility for maintaining that road privately. The property, as we mentioned, has an R3 zoning designation of multiple family residence. And according to section 171810 of the zoning code, the multiple residence zone, R3, is intended to stabilize and protect residential characteristics and to promote higher density residential development. Prior to adoption of this ordinance that we spoke of earlier, all of these parcels allowed for single-family residences by right, which is perhaps likely why we see that most of the parcels adjacent to this parcel itself are developed with single-family residences. The application for the use permit is to allow construction of a 1,800 square foot modular single-family residence zoned on an R3 parcel. And placement of the one modular home is considered a single-family residence, which requires a use permit currently according to the zoning code, because a single-family residence is a use group 2A. The modular home will have the dimensions prospectively 60 by 30, equaling 1,800 square feet. It'll be constructed upon a permanent engineered foundation. As I mentioned, in the northern section of the parcel, I apologize, my north arrow, it should be pointing that way. It's a little bit off the, the map. But let's see, a driveway will be constructed, about a 600 square foot driveway off of the main drive, and some landscaping will be installed. So what we will see will look similar, at least for the period in time, as a normal single-family residence. Okay, so because the parcel is surrounded by other residential uses, staff has determined that there will likely not be any conflicts to the current land use designation, subject to the conditions of approval. With the adoption of the LUE, however, we might be seeing changes not only to the parcel zoning itself, but also perhaps to the zoning code. And likely we might expect some rezoning of the parcels. However, for this period in time, there is no conflicts to be expected with a single-family residence or proposed additional residences. The project has been determined categorically exempt from CEQA under section 15303, class 3 of new constructions or small facilities. And the project is defined as a single-family residence, and so there is consistency with this exemption. It's pretty straightforward. Notice of the public hearing was published in Willits Weekly and was mailed to property owners on March 30th. 40 property owners were notified, and we did receive one comment in support of this use permit from the property owner on the northern, or right along Coast Street. I don't see her in the audience, but I believe this one got put into your agenda packet. I'm not sure if I...
It was emailed.
It was emailed, okay. Should I summarize the comment for staff? Are we interested in?
I don't think it's necessary. We all received the email.
So after review of this application in depth, staff recommends that the Planning Commission approves this request for use permit 2201 based on the findings of fact provided in your staff report and subject to the recommended conditions of approval. This concludes my presentation. I welcome any questions, comments, or concerns you might have.
Larry.
The thing that I was concerned with is the fire department had a visual that nobody could park on the one side so that they get the fire pieces in there in case they needed it. Who's going to patrol that? The city?
Well, oh,
Isn't it a private drive?
it is.
Yes.
So,
Dusty?
yeah, so that was, what you're referring to is correct, Larry. So as part of that subdivision that was referenced in the parcel history there was a condition that no parking could occur along the western boundary of the
Right.
private driveway, so to maintain proper fire access. So my understanding is that if private vehicles did park there, that'd be a violation of fire code or fire access to some extent, and that the fire department would have authority to have those vehicles towed or
So the owner of the piece of property that is going for this is going to have to do it himself, essentially. He's going to have to tell his neighbors that come to see him that you can't park there. Yes?
So Dusty, maybe as a condition, because I think we have a similar situation behind Frontier Days where there's a fire lane that exists, but in that particular case, it actually was posted. Maybe as a condition of this, that the owner has to put up a fire lane sign, and then it would be enforceable. by the police if that happened, and only for the purposes of fire lane. So if it had to be removed, or I believe that that's allowed for the fire lane designation. But I think it would be incumbent on the owner of the property to post.
Yeah, that sounds correct, and I'm trying to refresh my memory, and I might be able to pull it up, but that may have been a condition of the previous subdivision, so I'm wondering.
I think that was what I remember when that.
Yeah,
It was.
So if they're not there now, then that.
And all of the pertinent conditions for MLD 1603, which was the previous subdivision application number, all of them have been adopted into the recommended conditions of approval for this use permit. So it is a condition. We've received no complaints, to my knowledge.
I do have a question. Along that, I am remiss that I didn't visit the property, so I don't know if there is actually a signage up there. Because at the
I
time
don't
when we
think there
approved.
is.
So if there is, that would comply. But my question has to do with something you said, Taylor. You said at this point, it would be a single-family residence we'd be approving, but does this allow, if the owners wanted to add an additional unit? I know that they technically by law could add a
They could add an ADU.
So they could add, or could they add a shop, and would that be legal? Like a big,
Based on the current zoning designation, they could. And based
Okay.
off of the recommended conditions of approval, there's no condition.
But the shop building would have to be supportive of the residential, it could not be a standalone commercial facility.
Yes. There would have to be a residence in place with this use permit approved prior to building anything other than the residence.
okay.
But yes, you could have other developments on this parcel.
Madge? Under the current zoning, they could even put a duplex in and on part of the property that,
Correct.
because that is, the purpose of the R3 zone was to enable more residences to be built. And this doesn't preclude that, but it allows the owner to go ahead with a single family. So
It
it's
does.
really, that's why it's a conditional use, is because we're not insisting that he build a fourplex there right now, because he wants to build a single family home. So I don't see any
It
problem.
fits, but it doesn't fit ideally, that's why it's a conditional use. And you have to look at how do you massage it into the landscape or the neighborhood.
And by the way, the fire protection under 11 and 12 does require that parking be prohibited and that the applicant shall establish and maintain signage or markings to that effect.
Taylor, what happens if the council approves the conditional use permit and then the land use element does change and the zoning is changed to single family? Is there any recourse for the applicant, or is this just a procedure he's gone through and it is what it is?
I can't imagine it would nullify the use permit. We could add a condition to stipulate if that is to happen, where we could perhaps give the community development director authority to further massage or stipulate some of the conditions in place. If you have any ideas or recommendations for conditions, that is on the table.
So I'm a little confused about the question and the answer because.
Yeah, the answer doesn't.
Yeah, it didn't seem connected.
So, to me, if this was already zoned residential, I don't know what the zoning is, Z1, Z2, what is it?
It's R3.
So it's R3 now, but it would be R2 if it's rezoned?
Well, so in theory, that's plausible. And if it was rezoned to R2, a single-family residence is a permitted use by right in the R2 district. So in that sense, if you have, you received a discretionary use permit to establish a single-family home in R3, the zoning change is, again, I don't think the use permit becomes null and void, but essentially becomes non-applicable because.
It was used to originally grant the single family in the R3.
Right.
If the zoning is changed to the general plan amendment to the R2, it becomes right. The home is there.
Right.
So if any modifications to that property that is complying with the R2 zoning district takes effect.
So he won't have to go through any additional
No.
process or approval? That's what I was asking.
No, and there are no conditions on here that I think would interrupt his ability to fully benefit from an R2 zoning district, in theory, if that happens.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the only disadvantage I see of this for him right now is really that he has to go through this process because we haven't finished the general plan.
Exactly.
zoning element, and had we had that in place, then he wouldn't have had to come here. So this can only benefit him in the future.
Right. Okay. Any other questions from council?
Oh, no,
I'd like to open this to the public. Would anybody from the public like to speak on this matter?
I'm Melissa Jorgensen.
Come to the podium and say your name.
Hi, I'm Melissa Jorgensen. I'm here with my husband, Colby Jorgensen. We own the property at 701 Coast Street, and we help maintain the private driveway. We're just here tonight because we didn't get a chance to send in a letter, but we are in favor of the use permit for the single-family residence. For us, with maintaining the driveway, less traffic, for us, that would be preferable for us. So we just wanted to come and give our support for that.
Great. Thank you very much. Anybody else from the public on this matter? Okay. Bring it back up.
I was going to move approval of the
Okay.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the conditional use permit. And Dolores, may we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Condon?
Yes. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for your great work. Taylor, where'd she go? There you go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we will adjourn as the Willits successor agency and reconvene as the Willits City Council. Move on to city manager reports and recommendations. The first item is to adopt a resolution to submit a letter to the Board of Supervisors requesting that the supervisors place the Bit and Bender trust funds received by the County Museum into the community endowment account. Brian.
Well, it's fortunate that we have 3rd District Supervisor John Haschak in our audience tonight. So this is a item that was brought up at the end of last council session. We have received good news that the museum here, located within the city of Willits, received a financial endowment that is going to see them through some difficult times and allow them to grow and enhance their presence throughout the county. At the time, basically it was a consensual item that the council advised me to proceed to draft a letter advising the board for budgeting purposes to place it in the Community Endowment Foundation Fund. Instead of dropping into a general fund or a specific or non-specific line item within the county's budget. It's for tracking purposes and accountability. So the letter is in the packet, which was drafted by our finance director.
Great. Any questions from council?
I think it's a good thing. Yeah.
Okay.
Really good thing.
Okay. All right. So, Mr. Haschak, since you are here, I just wanted to say that this was something that I brought to the council after the Museum Advisory Board meeting, and it was the Museum Advisory Board's decision to send a letter to the Board of Supervisors requesting that the money be transferred to the Community Foundation. The hope is that the museum will be able to use the annual revenues from that endowment to pay for their programs and to help expand their programming. They were concerned that if it was left in the general fund with the county, that it would get used up for regular museum operations and they wouldn't have that perpetual revenue stream coming in from that endowment basically sitting and working as a interest-bearing nest egg. So I brought that to council. Council agreed they wanted to send a letter also in support of that recommendation. So the city of Willits is showing its support for the museum and hoping that the county will help protect that nest egg for the museum.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
John Haschak, thank you all, council. I'm totally in support of this. I really appreciate the Bit and Bender family's donation of this $500,000, and my commitment is to put it into the Mendocino Community Foundation. You know, I think the plan that the museum has come up with Brian Bender and I have been on those meetings, and I think it's a solid plan. I think it will give the museum, something about $20,000 a year to work with if it's invested properly and conservatively. And so I don't want to see it go into the general fund either.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate that reassurance. All right, next item, Brian.
Do we need to
Adopt the resolution.
adopt the
Oh.
resolution? So also move.
Great,
I'll
thank you.
second.
We have a motion and a second. Dolores, may we have a roll call?
Councilmember Strong.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes.
Stransky.
Yes.
Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mayor Hyde.
Yes. All right, next item is to adopt a resolution to implement a new athletic field use policy. Brian.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Right. City Manager Bender, if I might interject, as before, I'm going to go ahead and abstain from
Okay.
this. I'll remove myself from the room during the introduction, and I'll come back during public comment, and then I'll leave again during discussion. And use the restroom.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Okay, so at the last meeting, council instructed staff to re-engage with the three principal organizations who utilize the fields. And we did, and they were very informative meetings. Once again, the first round was good, the second round was even better. We had a good rapport with all three organizations. We had a good handle on what their needs are, and I think, at least for my benefit, it was a little unclear on, especially on overlapping of fields and scheduling, and also the use of some of the allied facilities, the restrooms, the concession stands, and Ken O'Shea, our Public Works Superintendent, was present, and he also reassured some of the organizations on our responsibilities for field maintenance and what in return he expects from the other organizations when they utilize the fields. From the discussions we had, we looked at, or we extracted the key themes that we heard from each of the groups. And we made one specific change to the one provision of the policy that is before you. So there's no really other changes. It's been condensed down to this one area. And what we heard was groups should have prioritization. We don't like to use that word, but I'm going to use it for the sake of convenience here. Prioritization, so if a group is seeking allocation for a field that's configured for their main activity, that should be considered a priority. The second element we heard was, we have a history here in this community. And all three groups do have a history. Some are not as extensive as their others, but they all provide benefits to the youth of this community and the surrounding community as well. And that's one thing we did here, that each group does have a strong presence in attracting community kids to their programs. And they encourage that. They have sponsor programs. They'll also provide equipment where necessary. If a family has multiple children at events and they can't cover all the costs, we heard about that. That was a good thing. So we wanted to make sure we recognized that. And then the other item was this, we talked about some shared field arrangements and opportunities. We recognize it's not as bad as we once thought. It's not like you have teenagers running into 5-year-olds. They're not that unlike field usage. And the coaches and the parents are overseeing the field allocations as well, so they could prevent the conflicts. So we recognize that. So the provision that we're looking at took those items that we heard, changed the language a little bit so it fits with the template, and that's what is presented to the council tonight.
Okay. Okay. Does anybody from the council have questions, or does anybody from the council have questions? No?
I want to say something, but I just wanted to hear from the public first before.
Okay, that's a good idea.
Okay. All right. So let's keep in mind that this is the third time this has come before council. We have heard the comments. We have received the letters. Staff has met now multiple times with the figureheads from the three main organizations who are the field users. We believe that we have achieved a policy that gives everyone a fair crack at the fields. So unless there are any new responses to this policy, I think, we should keep in mind what has already been said and, where we are. So does anybody have new material that they would like to add regarding this current iteration of the policy? Yes. Andrew.
Hi, Andrew Hosford, representing Willits Redwood Little League. I just wanted to say I appreciated our last meeting. It felt very reciprocal in the needs of our organization as well as the cities, and I appreciated it. It was a positive meeting. I was hoping that there would be some correction on the insurance requirements. The application and the new field use thing aren't in alignment with the insurance requirements. The new application requires $2 million and $4 million general liability, which seems extremely excessive. I checked with our insurance broker. It seems like there's a mentality to continue to increase insurance requirements, and the one I checked with specializes in non-for-profit kind of policies. Our insurance that we get through the Little League is a risk purchase group, and so it's kind of standardized across the nation for what's really needed for this type of activity with respect to assessing risk with those organizations. And the reason for the limits on our policy is really based off of that study. These are professionals that are working across the U.S. on providing insurance policies for Little League across kind of all fields. So we have a $1 million and $2 million general liability or aggregate for general liability. The new policy asks for $2 and $4 million. I think that's extremely excessive. I don't see that anywhere in my professional requirement for these types of things. I could be wrong, but I would ask that we revise that to be $1 million and $2 million. Then if they stay the way they are, we're looking at potentially an additional $3,500 supplemental policy to get us up to that limit. So that's the only comment I have about that, is just the additional cost, which $3,500 is about $12 a player is what it would cost our program to be able to do that. So we would ask that it just be edited to $1 million and $2 million for general liability.
And so, Kathy, you have more experience with the insurance.
I thought it was 2 and 2.
No, I think it's two and four in the proposed policy.
Yeah.
Yeah. In the proposed policy, the application shows 1 and 2, and 1 and 2 is what we provide.
That's ideally, it should have been 2 and 4. That's what the proposed policy is advocating. Right. I guess the question here is, I'm just referring, do you know what remit?
I think they're going to require 2 and 2 is what they're going to. I can check with them tomorrow.
Okay.
2 and 2 or 2 and 4?
2 and 2.
And I guess the question would be is how is the city getting that information, or who's providing that recommendation for insurance liability for youth organizations?
That is in discussions we have with REMIF, our insurance trust carrier, like you noted what you utilize. Recently, it's been about a year and a half now, REMIF was absorbed by a much larger insurance trust, CIRA, and they cover a lot more of the middle and southern portion of the state. So they have essentially, where REMIF was just local, it was essentially from Santa Rosa and north. Now we're playing with the larger players within the state, and REMIF has accelerated a lot of their provisions to meet what they see in other parts of the state. That's our coverages and our requirements have gone up across the board on all insurance-related and liability items.
Yeah, and sometimes those could be not just cost prohibitive, but prohibitive to potentially where we may not be able. This is the recommendation I got from our insurance broker that specializes in these non-for-profits, and she's seen where there's been organizations that couldn't meet that requirement, depending on what's offered in that specific location. I don't know yet. I haven't put it out to bid yet because I was hoping that it would that it would stay at that 1 and 2 million, but we'll see.
What we can do, we'll have one last check with REMIF and see if 1 and 2 is still viable or 2 and 2, and see what their comments are on a 2 or 4 policy.
Other than that, I just appreciate your time and effort on this. I know it's been way more than you were hoping for, and I appreciate our last meeting and getting through this stuff. So, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. All right, does anybody else have a comment they'd like to make tonight? And I understand, Ian, you have a presentation, is that right? Yeah. Okay. I think now is a good time.
Do you have the slides?
It should be loaded. And Ian, like we said, if you just could be conscious of the time commitment.
10 minutes, I'm on it.
Let's less than that.
Yeah. All right.
We know the important slides. Let's hit those.
I will cover what I'm going to cover. Great. My name is Ian Fitzpatrick. I'm the admin director and coach for Mendocino County Soccer Academy. And we've been meeting with the city for many months now on an equitable field sharing agreement. And there we are. Perfect. And we, we recognize that field access to safe fields in the community is a challenge. And I was asked after our last meeting to take 10 minutes or so to briefly introduce our organization and make sure that folks understand where we're coming from, who we're serving, and then so I'll do that here in the next few minutes, and then advocate for an equitable field sharing policy where where serves everybody and nobody's pushed off. Okay. Our next slide, Dolores. Great. So our founders, so back in 2013, this group of people came together to start Mendocino County Soccer Academy. And they came together really out of a recognition that the youth participation in kids' participation in youth sports over the last several decades has been steadily declining, both nationally and locally. So that was a concern. And there's a lot of reasons for that. And you can speak to the electronic devices that our kids are so connected to anymore. There's just larger societal changes that are contributing towards that. But we look at the rise of childhood obesity and just inactive kids. And so this group came together and used their experience to start. They figured, is there a new way that we can run a youth sports organization? And what happens in many youth sports organizations is that there's a lot of pressure on our volunteer coaches. 90% of coaches in the country are volunteers, and we need to embrace them and support them. But in many cases, there's not a heck of a lot of support. I've been there, and managing a group of 10, 12, 15, 7-year-olds, for the most experienced person, it can be a challenge, to say the least. And so a lot of times our volunteers are working jobs, supporting their families, and in the afternoon have to figure out how am I going to put together a practice plan, go to YouTube, find a practice plan, have other parents think they're better coaches, and yell at the kids from the sidelines. It's a troublesome thing. So these folks, Joseph Munoz, Shane Huff, and Naomi Rhodes, came together and said, let's look at another way. And these folks, Joe and Shane, played collegiately, won a national championship.
It's a policy, right?
Policy. Ordinance, I'm sorry. Listen up, you put me on last time. It's a policy. Policy. Joe and Shane won a national championship in college, and Joe was a National Player of the Year in Division II. Naomi Rhodes grew up here in Ukiah and in Willits, played soccer at University of Oregon Division I soccer, and they said, okay, well, is there another way that we can do things? Can we support our coaches and come up with programs that are developmentally appropriate, that kids find fun and engaging, and we can retain kids for the long term? Next slide, please. And then I came aboard in 2019, was really attracted to this new way of doing things, and fell in love with the organization. I'd been coaching locally here in our local youth program for 3 years, and saw that was introduced to some of the kids that were playing, and I was just attracted with the way they played. talked with Shane, Joe, and Naomi, and just fell in love with their programs and the way things were structured. And I found out what I wanted to do when I grew up in my 40s. So I've been able to use my experience in nonprofit management to do a lot of the work behind the scenes and also on the field. And I've been supported all the way in my coaching education, as you see that I received. Moving on. And so our three there's my we were established in 2013 with 40 kids in Ukiah. Today we have over 900 kids throughout the county. We have satellite programs on the coast, Laytonville, Covelo here in Willits, and also in Ukiah. We have roughly 200 to 250 players each year from Willits that are participating in the program, and we are a nonprofit 501c3. Our main programs, if you look at it from a simplistic point of view, beginner, intermediate, and advanced, our grassroots academy, are for kids that are just learning the game from 3 to 11 years old. These sessions are 6 to 8 weeks. There's no games, it's trainings only, where kids fall in love with the game and have no pressure on winning and losing. These are all run by our professional coaching staff. And you see our fees for a 6 to 8 week program, anywhere between $90 to $160, so pretty reasonable. Our intermediate program is our Developmental Soccer League, or our DSL. This is more of a traditional fall league, which most folks would be familiar with. And this is where we have teams that are throughout the county, where they train in their home communities. The Ukiah kids train in Ukiah, Willits kids train in Willits, Covelo kids train in Willits, and then on Saturdays we get together and play our games, back one more, and $115 for 3 months, led by volunteer coaches, supported by professional staff. Our advanced program are our club teams, and these are our travel teams that travel throughout the Northern Bay area. And these are teams that are coached by professional coaches, train in Ukiah primarily, and you see our fees, and those are for kids that really want to perform at the highest of levels. Next slide here. In Willits, we started the program here in 2019 with 14 players. And at that point, we approached the city about field access, and it was explained that there was an agreement with Willits Little League and Willits Youth Soccer that had exclusive rights to those fields. So, and we worked with Willits Youth Soccer. They weren't interested in sharing any of the fields. So we worked with the schools to access fields and did that at Blosser Lane, and that field turned into dirt about halfway through the season. And at the high school, we were offered right field of the softball field to use, all right? And so there's just not a lot of fields. And so 2020 came about, funny year, but we still had 40 kids in our grassroots program. Right after the spring of 2021, right after some of the COVID restrictions were lifted, we saw a huge growth, 200 plus kids in our program. We were on the Frontier Days property, and we made it work. And in this 2022 and 23, we now have, you can see the numbers, close to, as I mentioned, 200 plus kids that are involved in all 3 of our programs. Next slide, please. And we're really committed to making sure that soccer is available for everybody, regardless of their experience, their interest level, or their ability to play. So if they just want to kick the ball around and be able to have some fun with their friends, they can do that. And now we have kids that have 2 young ladies were just invited to a U.S. national identification camp that are performing at the highest of levels. And so we were looking to be able to serve those kids as well. But ultimately, we want all kids to fall in love with this lifelong active sport. We give out $50,000, just under $50,000 last year in scholarships, from $25 up to $750 and everywhere in between. We're not going to let finances get in the way of a child being able to play the game. Next slide, please. Our developmental philosophies, real quickly, very player-centric. Our professional and our volunteer coaches are supported by our professional staff. Really are focused on creating environments that kids can succeed and grow and have a good time. And that are developmentally appropriate. And as we go ahead and finish up, what we need in terms of our field use for our grassroots and our DSL program is fairly simple. And we have 1 club team that practices here in Willits 1 to 2 times per week. This is a group of 15 girls, 9 of whom live in Willits. They practice here on occasion. The space that is required, we need as little as a 30 to 40 yard grid that can be placed right next to another field or another group that's practicing. We've done that before, not a problem. Up to 1 field. I think there's been some information out there that was saying that we needed a heck of a lot more field than that. we don't. It's just throughout this entire process, we've never asked anybody, any organization to move their programs. It's just to share the fields that all kids, all Willits kids should have access to. And then the last slide. And lastly is opportunity. All these, what you see on here are Willits kids, ranging from Ethan Winter in the bottom right. He's at Willits High School. He's coaching with us, doing a fantastic job. Referees with us, has lifelong skills. You see the girls in the top there with medals around their neck. These girls competed got all the way to the finals of their state cup competition in our division. Did a wonderful job, make all of Willits proud. Angel Yacento played in Willits Youth Soccer. Did a good job there. Plays now at the college with one of our directors, Mendocino College, and has now got a scholarship offer at the University of St. Mary in Kansas. And is a great example coaching with us, and I can go on and on with the different opportunities that we're looking to provide. And all we're asking for is fair access to the fields that can be shared, and we can continue to provide these opportunities for these folks. And the fact is now that families have a choice in terms of what they're looking for some of their youth sports opportunities, and that's what we're looking to provide for folks.
Thank you very much. Do you have any comments about the current policy as
The current policy, again, I appreciate Brian and staff and Kathy for the many months in working through this. It's not perfect. The line about the history is a little concerning because I feel that does give a little preferential treatment to organizations that may have been here for 30 or 40 years. But I talked with Brian about that, and he mentioned that earlier from the dais about we all have a history here, and my concern is that MCSA would be lower prioritized in terms of when fields are being allocated, and that part makes me a little uncomfortable. But I do have faith in the fact that we can sit down in 45 minutes to an hour with other youth organizations and have an entire schedule for the fall done and rolling, and it can be done in a fair way.
Great. Thank you very much.
Dr. I had a question. I have a question of your young man.
You want me back up here?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Have you read this? Have you read this?
I have.
Okay. We have the blue typing. Did you read that?
I did.
Okay. Are you happy with that?
I'm happy with the exception of the history.
I'm saying, are you happy with this?
Overall?
Yes or no?
Yes-ish.
Not yes, I'm happy with it, or no, I'm not happy with it.
I'm not happy with the language about the history.
Very good. That's all I need to know.
Thank you. All right. Yes. Absolutely. Please come to the dais and introduce yourself.
My name is Jennifer Lucky, and I'm here as a Willits Youth Soccer board member volunteer to represent our organization that serves approximately 284 youth annually. So I just want to clear up some language first and say that Willits Youth Soccer is always all about sharing and partnering with other organizations and other programs. During our season that we serve, August through October, 3 months out of the year, that we serve about 284 youth. So during that time, we require 4 fields in order to be able to use those, in order to serve those youth. And I feel like communication has been transferred throughout the community that we refuse to share, but it's not that. It's that if we're serving 284 youth within those 4 fields during that time, it's not safe, and we're not able to, say, allow another organization to come on during the same time because we already have youth there. Now, if we have something canceled during that time that's not happening, then we're happy to share. And I have that communication that I can communicate with another organization that the field is not being used during this time. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that we're happy to share. It's just that we have to have a field to serve our program. If we were to basically give up part of those fields during that time, then we have to turn our youth away. So that's our only concern. We're happy to share. we've never refused sharing with anybody. It's that we don't want to turn our youth away. So during that time, we require the field space in order to serve the youth that we're already sharing. As our organization did not get exactly what we had hoped for, such as a renewed contract, we recognize the factors involved and know that you took them all into consideration for the best interest of our youth. On behalf of the Willits Youth Soccer Board, we appreciate the time you have taken to listen to the community. I know the shared goal between all of us is to make sure all youth have equal opportunities, no matter their social class, race, and to be treated with the utmost respect at all times. As leaders, we lead by example. It is up to us to set the stage. We want to continue a strong partnership with the city, and thank you for your time. Willits Youth Soccer Board, we thank you for your consideration, the time that you spent on this, as I know it has been a lot of time put towards it, so thank you, and the answer is yes.
Did you read this? Did you read this?
She got ahead of you.
Yes, you did?
Yes.
Are you happy with that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you.
comments.
Thank you for your
Appreciate it.
guys' time.
Anybody else from the public have comments about this policy, field use policy? Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the, are you good, Sabrina? Do you have any comment that you'd like to make? Okay, all right. I'm going to bring it back up to the dais, and I will entertain a motion. Unless there's further.
Yeah, I have a before motion.
Okay.
Yeah, one question, I guess, of Brian or staff. What if that word history were, the city will consider the role of the organization?
I have a question about, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I'm so sorry. I have a question about both the programs that I wanted to ask. Is that okay, real quick? Before?
Sure, come to the dais and give your name, please.
All right. I'll be quick. Hi, my name's Donna Cash Vargas, and I was just interested in knowing about both of your programs as far as it goes for the developmentally disabled youth, as far as it goes for that, and how inclusive are they on both of your programs? I know having a child that has special needs, a lot of programs are not always very welcoming. Not all the youth are very welcoming. So whenever I saw that you had that program that was so inviting, that was very, I was super excited about that. I actually took pictures and sent it to my husband, like, this is super exciting to see that. So we've been trying to find different outlets for our child, and she's super social. If you just saw her, she wouldn't be someone that you would know has a brain disorder. She's an amazing little girl, but anyways, I'm interested to know if both of your programs have children that are, is it just one program that is just developmentally disabled kids on the field, or is it like, is it all inclusive? Are they integrated with other children? That type of thing.
Donna, thank you for your public comment. That would be a good question to take up, not during council meeting.
Okay, that's what I was
both of those
asking. That's what I was asking, if that's what I could do.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, I'm going to close the public comment portion of this item, and I'm going to bring it back up to the dais, and I believe...
Madge, I was going to say, Madge had a question.
Yes.
Yeah, no, there were two comments that I was hearing about the current proposal, and one of them is that word that says the city will consider the history of the organization in supporting youth athletics in the Willits community. What if it were to say the city will consider the role and effectiveness or something like that instead of history, so that it's more on what do they offer and what are the benefits to the community, rather than necessarily using the word history. So I wanted to ask that question. And then the other one was regarding the insurance. Clearly we need to make sure that we're covered with whatever the current standard is that the city requires for insurance, but I would like it to be the lowest acceptable legally required amount, so that the organizations don't have to pay any more than they are required to. I feel like as a society, we're getting a little overly insured up, that it's just kind of becoming one of those things. So those are my 2 comments.
So if I can respond, I'll respond to the second question because I think that's more straightforward. Like I said, we'll verify with REMIF to see what the protocols are for the insurance coverages. If we can get away with 1 and 2, if that's acceptable. If it's 2 and 2, or if it's 2 and 4. I don't have an answer. We don't have an answer for you right now. Our contact, Amy at REMIF, is very responsive, and I'm sure we'll have an answer by midday tomorrow or by the end of the day on that aspect. Second part, or the first part, you had the revising the language to remove the word history, to add something else. That's fine. I'm not going to critique that. I think that is also maybe what you're suggesting is probably getting better to the heart of the intent. And the intent was twofold. One was to recognize that at least the 3 principal organizations that we're dealing with right now, and we're trying to accommodate, and we want to accommodate, there might be a 4th or 5th group in the near future. And so that is why that word is in there and layered that way, because we want to recognize or acknowledge that there'll be future groups. Just like Mendocino Soccer Academy has appeared in recent memory, there might be another group or another sport. And we want to be all-inclusive. That was one of the goals in drafting this policy when we sat down, was be as inclusive as possible, as the carrying capacity of the fields allow.
Using the word history in there would tend to discourage a new group to come in, because the 3 that are already sort of have a history would be considered, prioritized. So I wonder if we could say the role and the extent of...
Youth served. And the extent of youth served?
Yeah, the extent of use that in supporting youth, so that it is based on, that clearly when they have a track record of how many people they're serving, that helps you make that decision. But I think to enable it to be inclusive of potentially new groups, that it would be better not to use the word history and to consider the role and effectiveness of the organization in supporting youth athletics.
Commitment, presence. I don't like being in this situation wordsmithing on the diocese.
Exactly. Nitpicking the language at this point is not the most effective use of our time. Jerry.
I just wanted to make a motion to accept this with the caveat that in a year we revisit it, just so that staff and those involved can basically tell us, with the understanding that if we can bring the insurance down to whatever it is. I know that in the past they dictate to us, and I would recommend the Nonprofit Insurance Alliance. They're really good at if you're looking for nonprofit insurance. But that's what my motion would be, that we go with this and revisit it in a year, and just schedule it at some point so we can wordsmith it between now and then if we need to or something.
Okay. Larry, did you have a question you were going to ask?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I like the language, and I think that everybody needs a shot at it, whether they're really good at it or not very good at it. I think that it's our deal is to let every young man and young lady in this whole town do soccer if they need to do it. And if this does it for everybody, other than one group, they'll just have to work around it until we can change it. Okay? That's the way I'm going to vote. If you don't want to do this, then I won't vote for this. Okay?
So my motion was to accept this as is.
Okay, I know what you said. I'm just saying what I'm going to do.
Okay, so we have a motion. Do we have a second? I will second your motion.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion that I understand is to approve the policy with the caveat that if the insurance level can be lowered after we hear back from REMIF, it will. Otherwise, we're going to give this a try, revisit in a year, see how it's working out for the community. Okay? We have a motion, we have a second. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes, with the, hope that history isn't going to be the only criteria.
Stransky.
I will vote for it as long as we don't vary from this. And if we come back and look at it, we can vary it in a year. But now, this is what the bylaws are. So if you want my yes vote, it's a yes, no. I want this to
The
be,
motion was yes, with the caveat that the insurance amount may change if we hear back from REMIT that they will accept 1, 2, and 2, 2.
I'm not worried about that.
Okay.
I'm worried about the kids being able to use the field.
Yes, so
That's all I care
so
about.
we're just looking at the policy as it is.
Okay, that's what I vote. I vote yes.
Okay, thank you. Jared?
Yes.
I'm sorry. Dolores?
Yes.
Mayor Connie.
Yes. Okay, thank you everyone for your input. Thank you for going through this process. And if someone could please invite Councilwoman Rodriguez to come back in.
Thank you for all your groups for serving the youth. I just thank you.
Yes,
You all.
very important, and we're going to make this work.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
No, it's Dolores and
Thank you to the
Dennis
staff
and
for-
Kathy, and
For persisting in negotiating this. Very
it
helpful.
was informative. We learned a lot, and I think they learned a lot from us too. It was two-way. It was a fair exchange.
Thank you, Sabrina. All right, next item, Brian, some verbal reports on the county's proposed economic development committee.
Yes, I want to bring this to the attention of the council. This is a proposal that is starting to take shape. It was discussed among the 4 municipal managers within the county. What we're hearing, and I'm looking in the audience, looks like Supervisor Haschak has left us. The county has an idle ad hoc committee dedicated to economic development. It has not really been very effective. The proposal that is least being discussed among the Board of Supervisors is to convert that to a standing committee and give it some new mandates and new responsibilities to look at economic development in a different light. Once the municipal managers heard that, we recognized that was an opportunity for us to say, hey, would the Board of Supervisors accept the proposal from the managers that one elected official from each council is actually a assigned member to that committee and one staff member from each community? And the logic behind that is that we recognize economic development in this county is going to be different things, but we're not chasing the next GM transmission plant, the IBM chip plant. It's going to be an organically sourced proposal. What's going to work on the coast, it's not going to work inland, and what happens in Ukiah Valley, it's not going to benefit the more rural areas, the unincorporated portions of this county. What was conveyed to the county CEO was that essentially the cities are asking to have a seat at the table. We think it's important. And I'm also bringing this back to the council because when we looked at our goals earlier this year, one, we had a long, significant conversation and dialogue relating to economic development. I know it's an important issue for the 5 members up here. And I don't have a plan right now to do one internally, but we think we can pool resources, and if Board of Supervisors can hear the concerns from the 4 councils on the importance of economic development and what it means to the region, the county, and our communities, I think that's important. So what I'm going to do is write a letter in support. This looks like it's going to be on the supervisors' April 25th board meeting. And I may attend, or at least attend virtually, with other managers to advocate what I just expressed.
Thank you for being proactive on that and visionary and trying to reignite that conversation and come up with a plan on how we as a council can participate in moving things in a positive direction and engage our community. So I appreciate that.
So, that's what I want to do. If any council members have any comments or questions, you can talk to me between now and the 25th, if you need some more details. But once again, it was conveyed between the 4 managers. It was expressed to the CEO at the county. They're expecting it. And this is still clay on the wheel. They're still having to grasp this. But I think this is a real telling point to say to there's been a shift here. The cities are starting to find our voice and our expectations of what we want to see in return from the county and also what they can expect from us.
I think you're creating a league of Mendocino County cities.
We're trying.
And you're trying to enhance our local control, and I love it.
As
yeah.
are we.
Yeah.
We have all been very proactive and participating in this too.
So,
Thank you.
appreciate that. So I will report back maybe on the 26th. I don't know. We'll see how it takes place on the 25th.
Great.
Thank you.
That's what I have. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, that concludes city manager reports and recommendations. We'll move on to department recommendations. The first item is a possible approval of a new description for a contract administrative specialist for placement in the services and facilities department. Karen, are we hearing from you?
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, Mayor, council members. The request for a contract administrative specialist is going to be expanding upon the role that the person is doing at the moment. They will assist with a wide variety of contracting duties, drafting contracts, requests for proposals, requests for quotes, task orders, work requests, preparing front-end bidding documents. It's basically, they're going to run the contracts from start to finish. And again, we do have somebody that took this on as an extra job, and we really, with the reorganization, want to expand upon this position, and we think it's the right move. We want to fill the job internally. So there's really no increase to headcount at this time. The fiscal impact is budgeted at $98.52, which is the loaded wage. Now, of course, that's loaded wage for top scale, top 5. That individual will not be coming in at that wage because she's at currently a lower wage. But again, she's been doing this job proportionate, and we're trying to make it really a more fine-tuned activity. Did you say?
Yes. Taking the contract role on throughout what was started at Public Works, and now we're trying to incorporate it throughout the whole city to run through the.
Currently, she's an office assistant, which is a very low-paying job. She has been given stipends to do the work. That is not pensionable. We would like to, again, expand the role, and we do feel that we have, unless somebody else obviously bids on it internally that also has those same duties, we think it's going to complement the reorganization very well. The job duties that she has now as an office assistant will be spread to another office assistant that will service us globally versus just the one department.
What we like about this, it kind of cleans up some, like Karen noted, they've been receiving stipends, so they're outside of their pay scale, and haven't received direct benefit and recognition of the skills that they learn. But what I'm trying to say, most importantly, this is an example where we're looking at in-house talent, what we have nurtured, what we have developed, and taken advantage of it. This is a position that we recognize there's a need for, but we also look internally and see that the best candidate is sitting right there in front of us. So we want to encourage that we're an organization that looks internally first and move forward.
Thank you. Anybody on the council have questions?
I do. Just a question, as you spread out the duties this person's already doing, will you be coming back to us with the other person adding another classification? I mean, are we muddying the waters somewhere else by doing this? I'm just curious.
Right now, there's no intent to hire somebody. When the new Services and Facilities Director comes on board, Brian will sit down with this individual and talk about what that organization needs to have in order to be successful. So we're going to try, again, to take some of those duties away, giving it to somebody, not overloading the other individual, but making it complementary. And right now, we think that it's doable with what we have.
This is to sum up what Karen was saying, is we want to look at workflows first before we look at job descriptions. That's what is important. I think Larry.
Larry? Is this going to add anybody to this in the next 3 years?
At this time, I don't have that ability to answer because...
I'm just saying, as long as it stays the way it is now, because I have a feeling that the office is being larger than the workforce. The actual put your hands down and do the work kind of thing. And I really get excited about that because you have to have somebody turn a wrench to make everybody else work. Okay?
That's true.
Okay, and I want you to know that's where I'm coming from.
I would just like to say that the person who handles all the contracts is doing just as essential a work as the person turning the wrench.
That's
let's
your
not lose
opinion.
sight of that.
That's not my opinion, okay?
Any other comments from council? No? Okay, I'd like to open it up to the public if anyone has comments about this item. Hearing none, I'll bring it back up to the dais. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I will so move.
What is your motion?
Staff recommendation to request, let's see here, approve the contract administrative specialist description.
Okay. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Dolores, may we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong,
Yes.
Rodriguez,
No.
Stransky,
No.
Gonzalez,
Yes.
Mayor Condon.
Yes. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
All right, moving on. Our next item is to recognize the adoption and use of the revised flood hazard determination, including flood insurance rate map and flood insurance study report from Mendocino County and incorporated areas. Presenting member Davey Bowles, our building official.
Good evening again, council members, mayor. Davey Bowles, building official. So this came about, if you all remember, we had quite a public outreach for the new revision for the FEMA flood study. This was the second run at the previous revision that did not bode well for the city. So this was the second run, is a much more expansive study. It came into effect September 1st. Our ordinance has auto-adopt language, so as soon as a flood map or insurance map has been revised, our language auto-adopts it. So this is basically recognizing the fact that we are now using those revised maps as of September 1st, 2022, and they're in full effect, and we are currently enforcing those new maps. So it's basically just kind of a summary that recognizes that we are adopting it, we have adopted it, and we are currently using it.
This stems from a conversation I had both with Davey and Dusty. We did recognize, like Davey just explained, that our ordinance automatically adopted once it was released and authorized for approval by FEMA and the state. I requested this to come before the council with a resolution, basically acknowledging, like Davey said, that we have adopted it, the ordinance did it automatically. As a member of the flood insurance program, FEMA is obligated to do what they call a community assistance visit. They do it every 5-6 years, 3 to 5 years. And this would be a nice item to have in the file because they're going to go through files and they're going to check references to any permitting activity or regulations or enforcement. It would make our life easier when they come and do the inspection.
Housekeeping.
Exactly.
The last audit FEMA did was in 2016.
So we're probably due for one before too long.
And we had one house that had one issue. Remedy was a television certificate. Jerry?
A question, in light of all the rain we've had, how does it line up with reality?
That's one of the nice things about this map is if you've been in our community a long time, you've experienced the regular flooding areas. And so when you look at the revised maps, it's kind of a no-brainer. You're like, yes, that's obvious, that floods here every year. So that's what's nice about this. We had no objections when the map revisions came out. So the city didn't object. We had no community members object. And the city reached out. We sent a letter to every community member that was affected, whether good or bad, by the changes, and we had 0 comments. We had, a couple dozen questions, and then a handful of questions on follow-ups on the insurance, how that was going to affect them. But this is a voluntary program for our community, so we choose to be part of this, and by choosing to do it, we have to follow these standards, and that allows our community members to be part of the NFIP insurance program. Without that, they wouldn't be able to get subsidized insurance. So it's a good thing for our community to do, and it's a necessity. So.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions from council? Okay. Do any members of the public have questions on this item? Okay, hearing none, I'll bring it back up and entertain a motion.
So move the adoption of the accompanying resolution.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Dolores, may we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strawn?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Connie?
Yes. Thank you very much, Davey.
The old floodplain administrator in me appreciates that.
Nerd.
Yes, I can talk about FISs all day.
All right, our next item is to possibly adopt a resolution authorizing application for and receipt of the Clean California Local Grant Program funds to beautify and improve existing parks, local streets and pathways, and to provide community cleanup and dump day events. Also, upon approval from the state, amending the fiscal year 23-24 budget. And we will hear from Dusty, our Community Development Director.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Good evening. Dolores, am I able to get full screen on this? Yeah, so it's grant time again. And now that I've been hanging out with Taylor, of course, I have to have a nice PowerPoint. Again, thank you, Council, for all the staff hires we've been able to have in the department. Leilani Shine's with us tonight. She's our contract planner. She was nice enough to put this PowerPoint together, and she's also taking the lead on putting this prospective grant forward should the Council choose to authorize that tonight. So this is the Clean California Local Grant Program through Caltrans. Just a little bit of background on it. You can go up to for $5 million. They do highly recommend that you keep it under $3 million. The ideas that we have to present you tonight are expected to certainly fall short of the $3 million threshold. I do want to note, of course, there's the April 28th deadline, the end of the month here, so it's all hands on decks to try to put our best foot forward again. But I do want to emphasize that this is a competitive grant. Approximately 50% of the applications were funded last round. There's less money this round, so the math might tell you there's maybe a 30 to 35% chance, or not chance, of projects that get submitted that will ultimately be funded. There is an infrastructure and non-infrastructure component to what you can request through here. Very quickly, here are the 4 goals. Reduce the amount of waste and debris, beautify and improve public spaces, mitigate urban heat island effect, improving public spaces for walking and recreation, and certainly advance equity for underserved communities. So just to when you hear Clean California grant, you think a lot of like kind of litter cleanup, activating spaces. But when you look at the grants that were awarded, it's a much wider variety. So it's pretty loosely tied to how you might interpret those goals on their face. One of the fortunate things going on for the city here is because our community households make relatively lower income than the rest of the state, we fall under the disadvantaged community definition. We fall under that threshold that's highlighted or circled in red there. And what that means is that if we are awarded, we do not have a matching requirement. So if we ask for a grant for $2 million and get it, we don't have a matching component automatically. And then the other good thing going for us, because again, this is a competitive grant, so we need to score higher than the competition, and because of our status, we will get the full 30 points under the category that's noted there on the PowerPoint. So quite a few potential projects that we're looking at. So again, one of the city council goals is to activate our parks, identify improvements that'll make them more usable for a variety of community members. So certainly you'll see a number of improvements for all 3 of our parks. We're also looking to continue to implement our award-winning Main Street plan. To that, we're looking to include a request for the decorative street lights that can support changeable banners, planters, of those, and enhance the existing lighting on Main Street there. We did have the open house recently for our land use element update. We took advantage of that public meeting and sought input on ways that the city can improve our parks. This is one of the poster boards that we had up there. And we did, it's not surprising, a lot of people were in support of us finding different ways to improve the parks. A couple interesting things that came up was certainly some shade structures to above the playgrounds, as well as to make some of the other spaces in the park more usable for picnic benches, as well as a pavilion to support things like the farmers market or other little events like that. So that those types of improvements are also included in this prospective grant application. Here's some improvements specific to Rec Grove Park. You'll notice, and this was also something that's come up in multiple discussions with council, it's also included in our Main Street plan, is the idea of doing some wayfinding signage. There's a local group that has involvement from the chamber, local business owners, the museum, etc. They're doing some good work. They're creating some different maps and other exhibits, and these types of kiosks could be established throughout town and support some of the maps and other work that they're doing. We have a public art component, which would certainly be of value to the city and also would strengthen the grant proposal. Then we also have Babcock Park. So this is something that is probably our least used park. There's not too much going on there relative to our other parks, so we're really looking for some good ideas to activate that area. Obviously, we've been working with the team, including Kenan, and Kenan mentioned, it would be good to get that fountain fixed. There's some electrical work that needs to be done. Some better lighting would help facilitate the use of that park. Again, public art, and this is kind of a theme throughout some of the improvements we're looking to propose for the parks is new walking paths that sort of connect some of the features within the parks there. So now we're at Bud Steiner Park across the street, and look, we pulled these off of Google. These are just a couple ideas of what a pavilion might look like that could support multiple uses. Certainly the farmers market is, in talking to Michael Foley, he certainly is interested in, and I believe supportive of the idea of getting some type of structure that would help provide shade and cover for the farmer's market and make it a little bit more user-friendly. And obviously, it could serve for a multitude of other uses too.
Is the goal to have farmers market go back to Bud Snyder?
In a brief conversation with Mr. Foley, who is the current manager of the farmers market, I said, hey, if we were able to put a structure like this at the Bud Snyder Park, do you think that's something that the farmers market group would be interested in? And he said yes. Again, I'm sure he has some questions. I'm sure there would be some things to work out with, but in general, he thought that that's a place that group would be interested in going back to. Obviously, there was some conflicts with the neighbors in that area, so there's some more conversation to have there because that was a previous location. But yeah, the simple answer is yes.
Well, there used to be a pavilion there, right, Larry, in the park?
I heard from other folks that there used to be a pavilion or like a gazebo type structure, and they used to have bands and stuff playing in there. I haven't been able to find any pictures or anything. I actually would have asked to include that in here. So we talked about the 3 parks. Again, getting back to the following through on the efforts of the Main Street plan and recognizing the benefits of wayfinding signage. In our Main Street plan, it actually identified the city parking lot here, sort of behind the movie theater next to Flying Dog Pizza as a location for a potential kiosk. So we've added that location to our grant application. Again, coming out of the Main Street plan, this conceptual photo that you see on the right of a banner that came out of our Main Street plan, and it identified putting the banner on Main Street near the Main Street Commercial Street intersection. Certainly it's a benefit to us to promote our local events and whatnot, but having it visible from the Highway 20 intersection allows us to potentially draw in and bring folks into the downtown area potentially as well. So looking to support that improvement. So that's a banner that would go across and have its own self-supports on either side of the road there.
What was the location of that, Sam?
Yeah, so what you're looking at is the cross street of Oak Street and Main Street looking out towards Mariposa to the north.
Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm. And
is that doable?
Yeah, Kenan went out with Leilani and looked at it. We've spoken to the property owner on the corner. He may be amenable to us putting a post there. And then I believe there's an opportunity to put the post on the other side and still maintain ADA access. So I think there's a little further information to look into, but based on what we've looked at so far, it's feasible.
Because I think it's a really neat idea. I just heard that there was a lot of talk about, but with the owners was a little different program.
Yeah, the owner of that, well,
that's okay.
My conversations have seemed to be fruitful. Yeah. But we don't have a signed agreement or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Again, getting back to the Main Street plan, it identified the need to enhance lighting in that area. It envisioned, these decorative street lights that we see in a lot of other communities. Certainly they function as lighting, but they also can support changeable banners, different plantings and whatnot. So we haven't chosen a certain style or anything like that. These are just here to give you examples of what we're looking to propose within the grant application. And these are envisioned, we were able to establish electrical conduit on both sides of the sidewalk. Thank you Caltrans as part of the relinquishment project. And so we'd be looking to make use of that conduit to support these lights for that stretch of Main Street. So, kind of next steps, should council request staff to move forward is, we're going to be working with Public Works. It's going to be kind of all hands on deck to come up with estimates for this variety of improvements we've identified. And then we have an engineer on board who'll be working with us, because ultimately, we have to have an engineer sign off on any project estimate that come together. A lot of the things we have identified almost come out of the catalog, and then things like the pavilion, that's where we'll need that extra support from the third-party engineering services to come up with an estimated cost there, probably based on materials and square footage. So, oh, and then this was kind of a last-minute addition. We had a group come into the office earlier this week, and they were looking to do a mural at a private business on 151 North Main Street. That would be an eligible item to include in this grant, and this is actually what they've already come up with, so we certainly wanted to showcase that to the council. It's the old Sun Cycle building where the circular window is, pretty close to the high school.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yes, Brian is Davey's brother, and Miss Carolyn Bakewell there. So there's an opportunity to include some more public art component into this grant. So, yeah, yeah, please.
If we were to do that, it'd be on private property. I know it's grant funding, but would there be some sort of agreement with whoever the property owner is that they would stay for X period of time?
Yeah, and I think we would need to develop that and get that in writing and hopefully submit that with our application, because my expectation would be that, I mean, not only would we want that potentially, but also the Caltrans is, before they give us the money, we want to have that assurance in place. Yeah, so there's a resolution in your packet. We're looking for approval of that resolution, and that would allow us to move forward and submit a grant to Caltrans by the end of the month.
Thank you. Any questions from the council for Dusty?
Or Leilani, she's the one that's really working hard on this.
Just wondering, that multifaceted number of improvements that you have outlined up there, is that possible to come in this up to 3 million application? I mean, it seems like a lot of stuff.
I don't have a figure to tie to it. I do know they want to keep us under 3 million, so if we feel like we're starting to get close to that, then we might need to fine tune that a little bit. Yeah, I don't have a feel yet for it.
Any grant that improves our community, of course, I'm excited.
Do you find that Caltrans has been offering assistance with the creation of this grant application? I know that was a big part of what they were offering. Have you been able to take advantage of that?
Yeah, so we've had several clarifying questions to their staff, their local assistance group, and they've been very responsive. They've put on a few trainings, which Leilani's attended. Yeah, and I think whatever we develop, they know we're going to run it by them, and they've offered their support to look at it and give us any advice that they're able to. So we'll continue to work with their staff to put our best foot forward with it.
Great, okay. Well, I think this is very exciting. When this came before MCOG, I, immediately was like, oh, we need this. And I called Brian, and so I'm really glad to see that you've embraced this and are moving this forward. I think this would be fantastic. And of course, there's no guarantee that we would get the grant, but to even be going for it, I think is fantastic. And I love that you're tying it into the Main Street plan. That, makes my heart sing. And just hitting so many of the goals identified by the council is really, really great. Thank you. All right, anybody from the public have a comment about this potential application?
Well, Dusty, you mentioned community cleanup. So that's what I had a question about that, when the dates were, and then also could that count towards senior community service hours, for the seniors at the high school?
Yeah. Thank you, Donna, because I forgot to mention that there's that non-infrastructure component. So as part of this grant also, we're going to be developing sort of a cleanup program, looking for volunteer support. And I don't know too much about the senior volunteer program, but I presume that it could and would.
The answer is yes.
Yeah, I think the school would be the one.
So all we're doing now is applying for a grant that we hopefully will receive the money for, and then after receiving the money, that's when we take on the opportunity to establish a program, work with the community and the council, and actually establish dates. So.
And sometime before 2026, it would have to be.
We can confirm that part. Thank you.
Posted, right? You'll put it on your website?
Yeah, we've gotten, better at putting stuff on Facebook and that kind of stuff. So if you haven't, I don't even know how to say, if you haven't signed, follow us? Yeah. Follow us on Facebook and you'll get all the updates.
Good job.
One more question. Besides the mandate that has to be completed within 3 years, what are the odds of the grant being granted? What do you say the percentage of success would be in getting this? And then secondly, how do I put this properly? What else is your hurdles or roadblocks you have in the way of completing this besides the 3-year mandate?
Yeah, so like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, it's a highly competitive grant series. Around 50% of the applications put forward in round 1 were awarded. This year we understand there's a significant less amount of dollars in the pot to compete for. I don't know how many applications will move forward, but if it's the same amount as the last round, we're probably looking at around 30 to 35% of the applications being awarded. So maybe that can be the answer to your question there. As far as hurdles go, anytime you're taking on a grant project, there's an inherent risk with it, right? So we have the staff we have a lot of other things that we're trying to get done for the city that compete with our time. So we always have to be careful of what we take on, right? So there's a calculation there. And the good thing with these grants is you're allowed to identify funding for third-party services to help assist and augment staff's ability. But, we're conscious of that. And we have a solid crew here. And I think as long as we keep our crew together, we'll get it done.
So basically you'd have to be able to subcontract out to meet the 3-year deadline?
Yeah, the idea is that we would certainly involve some third-party component. Nothing's been set in stone yet, but let's talk about the pavilion component of it, right? There's an opportunity to include, project management as a third-party service for that to, help put the project out to bid, to do the construction management. If the state's willing to pay for that as part of the grant, then that's something that can, as an example, that's something that could alleviate some of staff's time. But with these types of projects and improvements we're talking about, the vast majority of work is going to be done by city staff.
And let me just add, there's other unknowns with projects like this. Not just staff capacity, it is the availability of materials. Once we get into a site that we have delineated for improvement, there may be something hidden in the ground that we have to deal with, or a site looked suitable for the project or proposed improvement and it doesn't fall through. So there's always those items that you deal with on the fly when implementing programs of this nature. So it's not entirely our capacity internally, because we can always reach out and bring additional consultants to our usage. It is actually once we start constructing, there's always unknowns at that stage.
Yeah, and then there's always the 3 things you have no clue about that you could never guess that are going to happen too.
Only 3, we're lucky then.
Right.
All right, so bottom line, we can't count our chickens till they're hatched, but this is a positive that we can all cross our fingers on.
How soon will you know what the result is?
August or September of this year, they'll be making the grant.
Okay, so that's why it's not going to be in the budget until then. Okay.
All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Also moved.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Dolores, may we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong.
Yes.
Rodriguez.
Yes, and thank you, hold on, and thank you, Mayor Connie, for bringing this to their attention. Thank you very much.
I think they knew about it.
I already did. You were on it? Not surprised.
Stransky.
Yes.
Gonzalez.
Yes.
Mayor Connie.
Yes, thank you very much, Dusty.
Dolores?
Thank you.
You want?
That's what she gets for going on vacation to the Disney Kingdom.
All right, our next item is a discussion of the existing City of Willits Sidewalk Municipal Code and consideration of potential updates. We will hear from Mr. Scott Herman.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. What you have before you is a compilation of the current, the existing City of Willits Sidewalk Municipal Code, and some options or some options to entertain if we want to relook at adding additional information for a more localized ordinance to this current sidewalk ordinance. So, the City of Willits currently, in the code, is currently under the California Streets and Highways Code. And basically, we follow the state code. We don't have a local code that we go off of.
Excuse me, Scott. Ladies, if you're going to have a conversation, can you take it outside, please? Thank you. Go ahead, Scott.
Sorry. So anyway, so the City of Willits currently is under the California Streets and Highway Code, which is, it's not a localized ordinance. It's what we fall under is the state one. So what we're looking to entertain, where some options are some, basically some ideas if we wanted to entertain going forward a more centralized or localized ordinance. So currently, the California Streets and Code 5610 maintenance of sidewalks. The owners of the lots are proportionate of the property fronting on any portion of a public street or place when the street or place is improved of, or if and when the area between the property line of the adjacent property and the street line is maintained as a park or parking strip, shall maintain any sidewalk in such condition that the sidewalk will not endanger persons or property and maintain it to a condition which will not interfere with the public. So that's the property owner's responsibility currently through the state highway code. The other one is the existing Muni code requires sidewalk repairs to be completed by the adjacent property owner if the construction is deemed to be a structural alteration, which under chapter 12.16 sidewalks, curbs, gutters, and construction repair. And then under 12.16.100 determination of major structural alterations, additions, or repairs. Existing regulations define structural additions, alterations, and repairs to mean any construction shall exceed 25% of the value of the structure being constructed, altered, or repaired. The cost of $10,000 or more would result in that. And the result in the addition to or modification or repair in the 300 square feet of building area, or whichever the above definitions less. So this code was last updated in 1989, so it's a little outdated, but still per current the state code. So basically, for consideration and discussion, thank you, Leilani. She did a lot of research on this, and so did staff, and we've had many conversations on this. Is basically we come up with 8 different options here, and just some ideas. One is the standards of triggering sidewalk repairs. Whether regarding a building permit fee or a sidewalk condition. Financial responsibility for different types of repair costs paid by the property owner or city. Some municipalities support a 50-50 cost share program. Noticing a repair of the time frame. Noticing deadlines for the city or property owner. Repair work requirements, number of contractor bids from owner, city staff, or city contractor. Inspection, enforcement, and property liens. Street trees, process for working with the city, root cutting, sidewalk heaving, etc. Please note staff is currently developing a street tree ordinance that may address sidewalk repair issues created by street trees. The point of sale ordinance, renovations, has been talked about. The City of Oakland requires sidewalk repairs with $100,000 plus in renovations prior to the close of escrow. And establishing a sidewalk repair hardship program. The City of Oakland, San Jose includes repairs for qualifying low-income property owners. So, and then currently, well, recently, we've met up with Precision Concrete Cutting, a contractor who works with REMA, aligned municipalities to conduct assessments of sidewalks and trip hazard removal. The effort is to retain them, Precision Concrete Cutting, to assess city-owned facilities. We met with them a couple weeks ago, and they came up and did a visit with us, and we said we would reach out to them after this. So I'd like to open it up for discussion or questions. I don't have them all, I can tell you that.
Council, questions?
You know, Scott, I think whatever we do, I just want it, I guess I would want it to be very upfront, because over the years, it seemed like when I talked to public people, including my dad when he was alive, you know, it was always the question, whose sidewalk is it? Why is so-and-so's being paid for and not mine? And those sort of questions come up. And it always paints the city in kind of a weird light, you know, well, why did you do it for Greta versus not me, or one of those sort of things. So I would want something, and I'm very interested in something for low-income folks, because we have a lot of elderly in town, you know, as we look at some of our housing stock, and there are a lot of folks that if all of a sudden their sidewalk was in disrepair, I would like to be in a position where we could offer them that lifeline. And at the same time, have a program so that it's not a question of we did it for Greta but not Jerry, and et cetera. So if it was, she met the income threshold, et cetera, and that's why we can do it. So those are my, I guess, 2 cents in it.
Yeah. I think the current one is 10,000 or more. So if you have to do a home improvement, 10,000 or more, then, or 10,000 is that?
10,000 is the minimum.
10,000 is the minimum. And so if you put a roof on, they could hold you to putting a new sidewalk or repairing your sidewalk, which could cost more than your roof.
Yeah.
So it's just trying to bring some options to see if it's worth entertaining or, you know, coming up.
I think the 10,000 threshold is
Outdated.
Yeah, it very much needs to be updated. I think that just, we want people to maintain their business property, their private property, and by putting something like that, that becomes a barrier that would discourage people from. And then in terms of the sale, that also concerns me. You know, you may not buy a home that needs a little bit of improvement, knowing that you may have to upgrade the sidewalk. You know, and often you didn't plant, nor did the existing owner plant that tree in that sidewalk, but maybe you're interested in this, you know, this affordable home, but the city's tree is looking at the sidewalk. Is it really fair to put that burden on there?
Exactly.
So I would say that if we were going to put it on the sale, that I would want to see a fairly high threshold in terms of purchase price. We don't live in a rich community.
Yeah.
So I think that that's too much to ask of people. So those 2 things are concerning. If you're remodeling or you're putting in new building there, I still feel it's reasonable to ask the individual to repair the sidewalk if you can afford to put something new in there. Generally, you can put that into your plan. That for me, that's like the exception.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the idea here is just to expose it. Brian, I know you wanted to, you know, you asked us to bring this forward. We talked about it at staff level many times. There's some gray areas, and we wanted to try to figure out how we can, you know, going forward, it's clear, cut, and dry.
I like that idea.
So, you know, when you refer to a state code, the city refers to the state code, people kind of go, why are we dealing with the state code? Why isn't there a local one? So, and I think the idea too, Brian, is to bring it to the transportation committee next to talk about.
Correct. And we're looking to schedule that. I think I've mentioned this in passing to a few council members and also to staff. This is, I know this is going to be our first discussion of many relating to sidewalks. And it's something that we need to address, come up with some policies. I think it's going to be a multi-tiered type of policy, because I think we need to focus on energy and resources in high visibility areas, which is like downtown, Main Street, public facilities, schools, parks. and in the residential areas. And there's there's programs. We can do abatements. We can create a general fund, revolving loan fund, supported through the general fund, to put, to identify so much sidewalk replacement per year. I'm going to throw this out there, and I know, for example, some cities do the sidewalk work themselves. They get a mixer. It's not that hard to mix mud, and if you're just removing level slabs, that can be done. So there's options out there. Yes, we need to codify what we're doing, but we also need to have a dialogue with the council, because this is a very public question, sidewalks. Like Scott noted, the property owners have concerns, who's responsible, this sidewalk's not being done, this one's being done, and we want to make it fair and also achieve our goals of improving all means of transportation in this community.
So I think this is really a great discussion to be opening up. As a Main Street business owner, I have had some not so pleasant conversations with city staff in the past, where there seemed to be confusion as to whose responsibility it was. Is it my responsibility? Is the city? We're just kind of going round and round. So I think that there are a lot of people in the community who feel that way, who don't really know whose responsibility it is to take care of the sidewalk. And a lot of people assume it's the city's, because it's a public walkway. It's like, yeah, it's my property, but it's really everyone's property. So, so I think being able to clarify this for the community, for the property owners to say, yes, this is your property, it's part of your parcel, but there's this public easement, and trying to find a way for the city to entice property owners to maintain and upgrade their sidewalks with a carrot rather than a stick, I think is such a better approach. When I first saw this come forward, I sort of worried. I thought, oh God, the city's looking for ways to enforce and go after people. And Brian quickly assured me, no, that's not what the intent is. It really is to shed light on the situation so everyone knows what the responsibility is and what the opportunities are for improvement. So like Sabrina, or like Jerry, I would be very supportive of trying to find a way to offer assistance to low-income individuals. I like the idea of a revolving loan plan, similar to the old, what were they called, Dusty? The facade grants, yeah, when we used to have redevelopment money. But trying to find a way to help our community members who would like to make improvements but can't quite afford it. I'm glad that you're working on some kind of option to address street tree issues, because street trees, although they're beautiful, do tend to cause sidewalk problems if they're the wrong tree in the wrong place. So anyway, long story short, I love that the conversation is starting. I know it's not going to get an answer tonight, but I really appreciate it coming forward. And I hope that we can find a way to work with our community residents to continue to improve walkability in Willits. It's important.
I agree. I think that's a great.
Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, Scott.
Question. The old resolution, did it include property liens?
Say that again?
Property liens, the old resolution include that?
These are just options that we're trying to, I don't have that answer directly for you, but these are just some options that we're looking into that other cities have in their ordinances.
Okay, so like in the ordinance now, is there property liens in it? Or do you put liens on?
It's off the state. I can't give you that.
We don't have a local ordinance that addresses sidewalks. That's why we're kind of opening this
So
conversation.
you're trying to create a local ordinance?
Some kind of potential look at.
discussion.
Plan.
Yeah.
I think we're looking at ordinance, maybe plural, but definitely policies that will define
Yeah, he
ordinances.
confused me because he said it hasn't been updated since 1989.
So we do have an ordinance, and we believe it's not very effective or realistic with the dollar amount, and it's has not been applied equally.
So my question being again, since there is an ordinance,
I think the ordinance says basically you shall do X, then refers to the state streets and highways code. So as far as the nitty gritty, a lot of it goes.
so does the state and highways code allow you to put property liens on people's properties if they do not maintain the sidewalk?
I don't have that answer. I'd have to go back and.
So,
Davey might help
so,
out.
yes, technically there is a way to do it. It's not spelled out in our ordinance, in the sidewalk ordinance, which is something that would be clarified. You would basically in violation of our ordinance, which would fall back to code enforcement. So, as far as my knowledge, never happened in the past. We've never fined anybody for any sidewalk yes, it is a potential remedy, very extreme.
But that's not what we're trying to do here.
Not the goal of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yes, through our code enforcement ordinance, we can properly.
I mean, and I can just tell you,
Whenever you said, when Sabrina said that it's not that, it's not that expensive whenever you're gonna upgrade for your driveway. It is quite expensive whenever you're repaving your driveway. We did it not that long ago. Well, anyway.
That wasn't what I was referring to,
Oh,
but
okay.
yeah.
All right, but are you guys going to require for the humps on both sides for handicap?
To be ADA compliant, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it
it
is
is.
ADA compliant if you do any improvement.
Because it causes such, we have such flooding in our yard because of it. So is that on everybody's driveway?
We have the same issues on return corner ramps and stuff too. It's real flat there for wheelchair purposes. So, it'll be ADA is required, yeah.
That's
triggers enough.
federal requirement, right?
Yeah.
And that's something else that would be nice to have addressed in our ordinance is what standards or reference we reference. State highway code doesn't actually adopt it. It doesn't actually spell it out exactly how. It'd be nice in our ordinance to say, hey, refer to Willits standards. That way we can, when we're pointing to improvements, people can look at our, sidewalk drawings we already have established and know what they're getting into rather than extending them off and trying to get engineered depressing. So that's just a clarifying thing that would be nice for us.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to say that in the past, I knew that, like where my dad's property was, that there was a time when, in fact, I fell on the gravel. My dad had curb, but no sidewalk, and there was a program the city had where it encouraged you to do it. And I think my dad had to pay X amount, but all the folks on the block did it, so you kind of got an economies of scale sort of thing that happened years ago. And at times, the city's also done projects where the sidewalk was included. That's where my question was, that having some sort of standard or policy would be good, because in some areas you wonder, why did your sidewalk get done for free, where I had to pay for it under this program, et cetera. And I think it's important to clarify it, so.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much for starting the discussion.
Thank you.
All right, our next item is to adopt a resolution authorizing the advertisement of the West Mendocino Rehabilitation Project Phase 1. Hallelujah. Andrea Trincato, our project manager.
Oh, is that one?
I'll let you. Oh, real quick, Scott, I just wanted to say thank you so much for the league, but it's your sidewalk. That was fascinating reading. I really appreciated being in there. I mean, I'm serious.
Yeah, thanks to Jim. He pointed that in our draft.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. Okay, Andrea, sorry.
You're a turd.
Yes, you are.
Oh, you forgot something.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Kanye and fellow council members.
It's just Connie, not Kanye, like West.
Should know that part. Yeah.
Right? You just call me yeah.
All right. And I'm going to do my best with this visual aid. It is not ideal, unfortunately.
You got the pointer, too.
Yes, and courtesy of Brian, I have a pointer, and my mouse is not tracking correctly. So, okay, there we are. Just gonna get there we go. Get a general overview, just so we have something to look at. So West Mendocino Rehabilitation Project is the next project on the capital improvement priority list. The project is planned as a multi-phased project that will improve drainage, pedestrian facilities, roadway resurfacing, and any necessary sewer and water upgrades. The area will be focused primarily on West Mendocino, with some adjacent streets addressed as well. And this is the overall project. The project being a multi-phase project, we are looking to address the drainage project, the drainage improvements first, as the first phase of the project. The city contracted with Tall Tree Engineering to conduct a drainage study of the area, and subsequently to design and prepare plans and specifications for this first phase. West Mendocino and the vicinity of West Mendocino leading up to the school experiences quite a bit of drainage problems, especially during the wet season, because there is a lot of water that comes off of the hills, spring activity, and there's a lot of groundwater that comes through. This is primarily surface drained and goes down to some drainage inlets at at Spruce. And what we're seeking to do is to intercept an old drainage way. So at Meadowwood, and I'm going to try and zoom in here. There we are. So at Meadowwood, which is this area right here, we have an existing storm drain that is collapsed. And a number of years ago, there was a semi-temporary fix where the drainage channel was improved, and there was some drainage structure changes here. But the end result was that the water no longer went down Exley. It surface drained down West Mendocino. And what we're seeking to do is to restore that storm drain that goes down Exley, and it meets up, let me see if I can scan up here. So it'll meet up with an existing storm drain here. Let me see if I can use this pointer now. So we're hoping, I don't think it's going to show up. Okay, I'm going to use my mouse. So it's going to meet up with this. There's a existing storm drain that goes down this pathway, and it goes into a field and connects with Mill Creek, further up from the school. So restoring this pathway, I think, will divide the amount of water going down West Mendocino, and will alleviate drainage issues, the surface drainage issues. So as a whole, this project is seeking to take surface drainage and underground it to alleviate localized flooding in the area in the really extreme events. And the amount of water going down the roadway really does chew up the pavement. The surface of the pavement is in disrepair. So this initial phase will repair the underlying problem by doing this extensive drainage improvement. It will set us up for a subsequent project next year to do surface improvements. So with that project, we would look to do any necessary water and sewer repairs, laterals, services, and then we would come through and do pedestrian upgrades as necessary to bring up facilities to ADA standards, and we would resurface the roadways. And so, going back to the drainage, I just wanted to say, this is one component here of the project. And then I'm going to try and scan over. So the second part of this project is to extend the storm drain from Spruce Street up to Easy Street. There's quite a bit of water that comes down in storm events and collects in the gutter between Easy and Spruce. So this will collect the water upstream, underground it, and connect it to an existing storm drain structure that goes down, a storm drain system that goes down Spruce Street and meets up at the entrance here. And there's a small improvement that needs to happen here. Right at the entrance of Brookside Elementary, we're going to install a DI right here, drop inlet, or a curb inlet. And so the water will collect in the structure, and then we'll replace this pipeline, this manhole, and it will connect with some newly improved, storm drain through here. We had to do an emergency repair because some of this is CMP, and we had a sinkhole.
And that was on over private property? Or?
It was.
What's CMP?
It is corrugated metal pipe. Okay. And it has a tendency to, there's quite a bit of it throughout town. We've been going through and trying to eliminate it whenever we're in an area that has it. What happens is it rots from the bottom. It rusts out, and then the water leaks out of the bottom and it washes material away, and then we get sinkholes. So that's the project in a nutshell. We have a small bit of sidewalk improvement there that will be necessary to install the storm drain structure. And we also have, in terms of flat work or concrete work, we have a small amount of valley gutter over closer to Meadowwood. As part of the Meadowwood improvements, I'm sorry, oh jeez, I lost it.
A question for you, as far as the Meadowwood area, are we replacing that storm drain out there? I mean, it's ancient, or has it been fixed at some point?
So the Meadowwood area is that first initial improvement. Here it is. Okay, the Meadowwood, we are going to, so the repair that happened a while ago, because the existing storm drain was just gone, they reconfigured this drainage way and made some improvements, but what it does is it surface flows down this way rather than going the traditional route that it used to go with the storm drain going down Eggsley and meeting up with Mill Creek. So we're looking to rehab that old line and put it in the same place for most of the alignments.
Does that drain out just at that corner of Brookside Drive, out that field out there? Is that what that is?
It drains out on the west, like the west side of Brookside.
Yeah.
I don't have that in this aerial.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it basically comes out upstream of school, and then the other side of this drainage that goes in from Camp Lane goes out on the downstream side of the school. Yeah, and so, this is the first phase. It's substantial. It is a $633,000, the engineer's estimate is $633,643. And what we're seeking to do is get approval to advertise the project. With our time frame for preparing this project, we had to do a drainage study, and prepare this phase of the project. It was a very tight time frame, and that's why next time we come with the award, we'll have better visual aids. But the project's the plans and specifications are being finalized right now, and we needed this additional 2 weeks because what we're trying to do is hit the target of construction basically right at the beginning of summer, so as to lessen the impacts to the school with any construction during the school year.
That will definitely be an issue.
Yes, especially with the second phase. So again, when we come back with the second phase, we would be targeting a project that we can complete in the summer months and not impact school traffic.
And phase 2 would be the water and sewer and surface treatment and all
Exactly.
of that. Okay. Okay, great. Anybody from council have any questions? Andrea?
Just one, you communicated all this with the schools so they know what we're doing, so they,
Yeah,
no surprises.
we have sent out, we've been in the process of trying to meet with the school and discuss the project. I do think that this phase of the project, the impacts to the school will be minimal. From what we understand, there may not be a summer school at that location this year, but we're seeking to verify that. And then with the main part of the project being on Exley and on the West Mendocino portion between Easy and Spruce, we don't think it's going to impact traffic tremendously going to the school or coming from the school. There'll be ways to get around it, but there will be some significant impacts when they're installing the manhole just at the entrance of the school.
I would just ask that you meet with school staff. I think in the past what I've heard is that somebody talks with the superintendent's office, then they leave, and then the boots on the ground don't know what's happening. And this way, at least, you could tell them this is the big picture, we're doing this now, and then later on, this will happen. That way, they can't say they were never told.
Yeah, so we're reaching out to the superintendent and to the transportation.
I'd reach out to the principal, too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Good idea.
Thank you. That's
Again, what I usually hear at feedback, I think I heard it with Blosser, was that you may have talked with the transportation folks, but I get the impression sometimes it doesn't trickle down.
Yeah. Yes, we'll do that.
Anything else from council?
No, I was just thinking about the pedestrian as well as the vehicle safety of framing on those roads after the improvements are done. Yeah.
Yeah, we're very excited about this phase, and the flooding that we saw around the late December storms was substantial through this area. So it'll be exciting to see this go in, and then next year when the surface improvements come in, that will be very exciting.
I do think Sabrina brings up a really good point, though, that, I mean, and Brian, you've mentioned this before, too. Anytime we do street improvements, we tend to see traffic speeds increase. And so I think that in that area in particular, because it's so dense with residential and we have the elementary school there and there's so much traffic associated with it, I would really hope that we're working with our police department to make sure that at least in the initial phases after full resurfacing and repaving, that we're seeing some signs of enforcement there so that people don't just turn it into a speedway, because people have been slowed there for years because of the pool of water at Easy Street and the orange cones that are perpetually there. But once it's beautiful and smooth, it could get scary if people just put the foot to the metal. So
Our biggest problem in that neighborhood is the rolling stops.
Yeah.
Because there are so many stop signs,
Yeah.
people don't actually stop. They just roll on through the stop signs consistently.
Some of them don't even roll, they just go
Some
at
of
it.
them go, and I think we know who those ones are too.
The California stop. All right, so does anyone from the public have any comments they'd like to make about this item? All right, I'll bring it back up to the dais and entertain a motion.
I would like to move staff
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt a resolution authorizing the advertisement at long last of the West Mendocino Rehabilitation Project Phase 1. May we get a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong? Yes. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Connie?
Yes. Thank you, Andrea. It's exciting. All right, finally, we have Manny to give us a report establishing the Measure K Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Mayor Connie. Vice Mayor, council members, and city manager. I'm here today to give you a resolution for consideration on establishing our Measure K Citizen Oversight Committee. On the 29th of March, I believe it was, we all met and basically went over all the applications associated with the Measure K Citizen Oversight Group, and 3 of the 5 members were selected, and those members are Richard Winkle, Richard Willoughby, and Arnold Mello. And so with that, it actually satisfies, it'll develop our Measure K committee and satisfy our municipal code section 332-140. And making it short and sweet. You guys have any questions?
I just want to say thank you for getting this done, and we owe it to the community, and I think you heard us by getting this done, so thank you.
Thank you.
And I would also like to thank the 5 members of the public who submitted applications to serve on the committee. Appreciate the interest, and we're happy to select these 3 individuals who we think will be good stewards and overseers.
Well said.
Just a question, is that committee going to be, are their meetings going to be publicly available?
The meetings will be considered public, yes.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's all,
Correct.
Yeah,
and it's an advisory to.
it's advisory.
Any further questions from council? Any questions from the public? All right, bring it back up to the dais and entertain a motion.
I so move.
I'll second. We're all asleep.
All right, so we've received a motion and a second to approve a resolution selecting the 3 candidates as named for the Measure K committee. Dolores, may we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Strong?
Yes.
Rodriguez?
Yes.
Stransky?
Yes.
Gonzalez?
Yes.
Mayor Connie?
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you, and I too also thank the applicants for putting in the application and everything. Thank you again.
Thank you, Manny.
All right, next item on the agenda is department monthly reports. We hear those at the 2nd meeting of each month, so we get that next time. Number 11 is city council announcements, communications, and reports. Madge, would you have anything you'd like to report?
Yes, thank you. The EDFC, the Economic Development and Financing Corporation, will be meeting tomorrow at 2 in the afternoon, and I'm unable to attend that one. But I think it's relatively routine. I think they are going to be, one of the items on the agenda is this county-wide economic development proposal. So that's good. And there's a couple of loan approvals and so forth. Anyway, the other thing that I went this last week was the Sonoma Clean Power Board meeting. I'm the city representative for Mendocino County cities to that board, and I was able to go in person down to Santa Rosa. I find their meetings to be fascinating. They, among other things, follow not all, but major legislation in Sacramento regarding energy provisions, and a lot of it affects our customers. A lot of it affects PG&E as well as Sonoma Clean Power, which is an alternative provider of electricity, but they use PG&E's grid to bring that power to our citizens. And they also follow what's going on in the Public Utilities Commission. So one of the interesting things is that right now PG&E has been very, very slow and in some cases unable to provide hookups to new customers. in many places in the state, and certainly up in Humboldt County is a big issue, and some of the places in the Northern Valley, Inland Valley. And so, so far, it hasn't been an issue here, but there's something like 8 different bills in Sacramento to try to hold PG&E accountable to the customers to provide timely hookups to new customers. Obviously, the state has a huge interest in that because we want development, and we don't want people to be stymied, not be able to add power to their developments. Another issue that they're involved in is the safety of the grid and how PG&E can close down the grid if they think that the situation is, potentially hazardous. But they don't let anybody in the public, including people like Sonoma Clean Power, know what their standard is. Like what is it that triggers a power shutoff? And so they're trying to make PG&E more accountable. Anyway, those were some of the interesting things that happened there. The third committee that I am, or board that I am on, by virtue of my being representing Willits there, is the Mendocino Solid Waste Management Authority, otherwise known as MSWA, or sometimes known as Mendo Recycle. And as we've reported in the past, the board, which is a joint powers board representing the county and the cities that are part of that joint powers, did not meet from October until March, while the very, very skeleton staff just barely kept the Ukiah facility open. They were not able to provide any of the remote services that MSWA is supposed to provide to the rest of the county. So there was no cleanup of illegal dump sites, there were no hazmat collection sites, there was basically no service beyond just one facility in Ukiah. So we were not happy with that. Nobody was happy with that. Finally, after months of, I don't know what, negotiations and contracts going to lawyers and so forth. Oh, and C&S, or at least formally C&S down in Ukiah, has proposed to take over the service. Yeah, so it would be privatized and it would contract from MSWA to C&S to take over the kinds of collections that they used to do, that MSWA used to do. They also had a buyout, and so that part of the delay was theirs. Different ownership. I don't want to go on too long here, but anyway, finally in March we had a meeting of the MSWA board, and the night before they had the contracts to us, which didn't give us time to look at them. So they delayed for 1 week and had another meeting at which one of the board members was sick and we didn't have a quorum. So we are now on April 20th, I believe it's the 20th, is going to be another meeting of MSWA board. And what is being asked at that meeting is to approve a contract with C&S to take over the actual services, a contract with the city of Ukiah to be the administrators on behalf of MSWA, and a contract regarding the actual facility in Ukiah where the hazardous material is processed and stored and distributed appropriately.
Question for you. If C&S is going to take over those roles that MSWA used to provide, what is the point of still continuing to have MSWA?
MSWA is the public entity that is going to make sure that they provide all their contractual services.
Gotcha. But Mendo Recycle, that entity will be?
Essentially, the board will have the city of Ukiah staff as their administrator, and there would be an executive committee of the board dealing with C&S. But since C&S is being asked to do something that's a public service to the whole county, we believe that the board and the entity, the joint powers, are still in effect, and they will supervise that.
Gotcha. Okay.
So anyway, the one thing that I'm very concerned about is the way the contract with C&S is written essentially is a price list, like X dollars per hour, X dollars per vehicle miles, X per, X dollars to run a remote collection. But they haven't given us a sample budget of what they will actually do. And I am requesting of the staff and C&S that we have that information when we meet on April 20th. And I'm going to continue to advocate that we have a fairly good idea of what service we will buy with this contract. At this point, it's just a price list. So anyway, I'm sorry to make this so long because we're all very tired, but it has been a long and arduous process getting as far as we are now. I am very impressed with the City of Ukiah administrative staff. Tim Erickson is the main person, and Jim Robbins is going to be our grant helper, which is going to be very important for having adequate budget. So grants have always been an important part of the budget.
Okay. Thank you, Madge. Sabrina.
My committees and boards have met, but it's all been routine business, just the general running of the organization or oversight, and nothing significant to report.
Thank you.
I went up to the League of Cities meeting on March 24th. I'm on the legislative committee. We basically voted to send letters of support on SB 43, which would update California's conservatorship law, expanding the definition of gravely disabled to include conditions that result in substantial risk. It's basically give another tool to help the mental health folks. SB 363, which would establish real-time internet-based dashboard to collect, aggregate, and display information about available beds, psychiatric facilities, and substance abuse. It just helps get these folks placed somewhere as quick as possible. So, because a lot of times you're making phone calls to get folks a place. And so a lot of times they sit at our hospitals, taking up our police department's times, et cetera. And then SB 423, this was a Senate letter of opposition, which would modify and expand SB 35 to allow certain multifamily housing developments. Basically, it's local control again, so trying to maintain our local control. And then lastly, AB 1708 would amend Proposition 47 to increase accountability for repeat offenders regarding theft. And so it kind of adds language about, offering rehabilitation and for drugs sort of things, so that it's not just you're going to jail. Hopefully, when they tried to amend Proposition 47 before, it failed because people think they were trying to dismantle it. And this is along the lines of the repeat theft offenders that cause problems. So, and then we met in general session to basically ratify what we did on legislative session. Then LAFCO met on the 3rd of April, and basically had a workshop budget for the 2023-2024 budget and work plan. Then we had a presentation on the Ukiah Valley Basin Groundwater Sustainability Agency. There's actually water now to talk about, I guess, so. And then just discuss our work plans for LAFCO projects, so that was it.
Thank you. All right, I attended the MCOG meeting last Monday. It was our first time being back in person, although we did a hybrid situation, so I was here as a public meeting in chambers here by myself. It was very odd, so next time I'm just going to go to Ukiah because it was too weird. They did give us a presentation and discussion from AMA Transit Planning. They're the consultants who have been working on the mobility solutions for rural communities in Mendocino County. They're the ones who did all the surveys and the workshops on bike trails and Lakeville, trying to figure out how to resolve some of the unmet transit needs that our county chronically has. They don't typically give a mid-session report like this. The final actually won't come to the MCOG board until August, but they wanted to give us some time to think about it because what they're introducing is this idea of a CTSA, Consolidated Transportation Service Agency. MTA is already a CTSA, but they're looking at making the Family Resource Center one also and potentially using existing MTA allocations to fund the CTSA, who would then go after grant money to work on these alternative solutions to the transportation problems. I did make the comment that I was uncomfortable removing any of MTA's existing allocations because I know how much they've struggled after the pandemic to rebuild their ridership. Dan Girardi agreed that he was concerned about that as well. So we'll see where that's going to go. That was the consultant's sort of first attempt at trying to figure out how to address these issues. Ultimately, the MCOG board may decide that the unmet transportation needs are still unmeetable, in which case all of this workshopping will essentially be collecting data for no real solution, but we'll keep working on it.
It's something that MTA expressed as a concern to begin with is we're addressing the problem, but we haven't identified any new money.
Exactly.
So you're just going to shift money, so then you're going to create another problem.
Right, and one of the problems that I saw was that the consultants are from much larger communities where budgets are much larger, and they said, oh, well, you'll just do this. Well, it's not quite so easy here, so hopefully they heard from the board that that may not be the ultimate solution, so keep working on it. The other good news from MCOG was that the funding did come through for the Covelo Trail. Last time I had mentioned that they had a big shortfall and weren't sure that was going to go forward. The state worked with them and did find a way to fund that program, so it's going to happen. That's really good news for Covelo fans. Again, I know it's not a Willits issue, but it does tie into community safety and walkability, and hopefully, that can help. If we run into a similar situation with our trail, it's good to know that options are out there. I also met with the Finance Committee. Of course, Manny already gave us the outcome from that with the Measure K members selected, but I did want to point out that he mentioned there will be some new policies coming before council before the end of the fiscal year, so probably mid-May. We're going to be looking at potentially adopting some new policies to help streamline his department, purchasing policy, cash handling, reserve policy, and a financial crisis policy. So those will be coming to us. And he also wanted to let everyone know that this city is currently engaged in a rate study looking at water and sewer rates. We have not done any increase since 2019, and as we all have felt, inflation and material costs have increased and so have devalued our water and sewer funds. The idea is to, we're not looking at a big increase, but regular increases will help us keep up with inflation and prevent a big gap from forming, so that we don't surprise our water and sewer users with big rate increases after waiting years of not doing them. So just give you a heads up that that will be coming, the rate study to look at and a potential increase. And that is my report. And anybody have any good and welfare?
So we're granted, I haven't tagged the date yet, but I think it's later this month, so we're going to doing a tri-tip dinner coming up. So
At the end of the month, I believe.
yeah, I think so. I think the 21st comes to mind, but I may be wrong.
You're right.
I think, yeah.
Yes.
The 21st, and then the following weekend is another event for, what's the one that for uniforms and such at the high school?
Boosters.
Boosters.
That's right.
Boosters is the following weekend.
Buy your tri-tip tickets.
I'd say good and welfare is that this meeting is almost done.
You know what, I just want to add, thank you everybody for coming together, staff for celebrating Jim Miller's contributions to the city. Sometimes you come and go as a city employee and go to your next chapter and you wonder whether you'll be forgotten or not. So it's nice to be able to tell his family that he wasn't forgotten.
And thank you, Kathy, for writing such a beautiful proclamation. Yeah.
Our condolences to those of you that were close to
All right, we have no closed session this evening, so at exactly, what is this, 9:57? I'm going to call this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for sticking around.